Hey everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian.
Welcome to another episode of Talking into Infinity, a Dream Theater podcast. I am your host, Jon. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the CMSnetwork.com. We are live here every other Thursday night on all four of those fantastic locations. If you're looking for video replays of the show, you can find them at our main hub, which is Heavy Metal Television, every other Friday. So the week after we do it live, you'll find these video replays right there at Heavy Metal Television. You should go check that out anyway, because they have a ton of any kind of hard rock and heavy metal content you could possibly imagine. So whatever you do, go subscribe to Heavy Metal Television. And if you are just looking to find the audio version of the podcast, just Google Heavy Metal Television, Google the CMS Network, or Talking into Infinity podcast, and we are pretty much anywhere you can find your podcast. So thanks for tuning in. Usually I've got my buddy Brian on the show, but tonight he is not able to be here. He's off doing other progressive rock stuff. He's going to watch the Rush movie. I forget the title of it, but it's been re-released in theaters. I think this is the third time, and he's a huge Rush guy, so he's like, I can't miss this. You got to get a special guest host on. Do you know anybody who would come on and join you to, host the show? And I was like, you know what? I think I got somebody in mind. So I've talked many times on the show previously about the fact that I actually was at SCORE. I was at Radio City Music Hall in New York City on April Fool's Day of 2006. And so I thought, what better person to have on the show as a special guest host when Brian can't make it than my incredible friend Matt Wardlaw from UltimateClassicRock.com, who was with me in New York City at Radio City. What is up, man? How's it going?
Hey, man. It's great to see you. We haven't talked, since that show. I guess it's been 15 years, and we haven't talked for about 14 and a half years, so it's nice to finally see you again.
You just don't answer the phone. That's
true.
Don't blame me. Don't blame me. So, little backstory. You and I have actually been friends much longer than 2006. So,
yes.
God, and we have had some crazy road trip stories. The Van Halen show, we went to see Van Halen. It was 07, I think it was.
Yep,
and
correct.
Drove. Matt lives in Cleveland, as same as Brian and I. And Matt and I met up at my place. We were going to see him in Columbus, and we got maybe 10 minutes from the arena. Matt says, "You got the tickets, right?" And I went, "Oh God." and Matt's a little more nervous of an individual than I am. He was not happy with me. And
this is probably true. I need to revise the story because you tell the story slightly differently. The way it actually went down was we were nearly to Columbus, and all of a sudden you started swearing up a storm, and I'm going, what is going on? So I just asked, I said, what's the problem? And you're like, I forgot the effing tickets, So
Thank you.
And your mom, God bless her, came to the rescue and started going through all sorts of stuff. And, eventually we got things, sorted out, and the three of us saw a great rock show, and it was a good night. But it was, of the many situations we have shared through the years, as you just kind of referenced, that was one of the more humorous ones for sure.
But we had a number of humorous ones.
We did.
Based off of SCORE in New York City. So, so Matt, I know you're new to the show, but one of the things that we like to do is bring some fans on. So, Puzziani, is it Puzziani? I'm Italian, so Puzziani, first time watching live. Puzziani, you gotta do it. Puzziani, my mom's maiden name is De Rosa, so
you gotta try the way I've always done it, John, is you always gotta try to insult the person that's going to participate positively. So Puzziani,
or it's pronounced Puzziani in Italian. Listen, you're not very ethnic. I am. So
That's true.
seriously.
I'm not.
So
Yeah.
apparently, I think he logged in multiple times. Joey Puzziani says, Dream Theater is the only band that matters, so thank you for doing this. You are very right. And I would like to mention, Matt, that he says I'm correct. It's Puzziani.
Well, I think I said it the same way too. So I think that like we're both right in this instance, which rarely happens. So I'm happy to be right at the same time as you. Let's celebrate this.
That is
high five. All right.
Virtual high five. That is very rare. All right, so let's get right into this.
Yes.
So it's God. How many months before the show did they announce Score? Because it happened. It was April 1st.
Before we get into this, I feel like is it relevant the fact that we saw the band together previously a few times, but the show that sticks out to me is 2002 in Chicago, where
Yes.
I've been thinking about this and I had to ask you. I know that I saw the first night, but did not see the second night where they played Master of Puppets. You did see Master of Puppets, right?
No, that is
Okay.
incorrect. So we had made a plan to try and see both nights. It was me and you and Matt and Andy Dixon, my best friends
Yep.
who I've been with since kindergarten.
Yep.
And I wasn't
bastards.
able. Look, you're the one that's known me almost as long, and you're on the show, so shut up.
I thought it was, I mean, you guys have probably covered this many times, but I just wanted to like cover for tonight's podcast that both of us went to Chicago for that weekend. And in the nearly 20 years since then, when people find out that I was at that show, they're like, "Oh, cool, you saw Master of Puppets." And I'm like, "No, I did not see Master of Puppets."
No, I tried to get us tickets to both nights, and I ended up only with the one that was not Master of Puppets because that one sold out so fast. I was right there. I was close, but we got the other night.
And we went down and we were like, you know, maybe there'll be some people scalping tickets outside the show. There were 0 scalpers. Now, John, how many concerts have you been to where there's not at least, 5 scalpers outside? There were none.
Yep. Well, I guess we shouldn't have been surprised. Like Dream Theater, like as fans, we are very hardcore. And then when they say, "Yeah, you want to come to a Dream Theater show?" Okay, well, would you also like to hear the Master of Puppets record played in its entirety by Dream Theater?
Yeah.
I guess we shouldn't have been surprised. Oh, look at this.
So,
Okay.
I mean, the other part of that is that, like, really what happened was Mike Portnoy was outside of that Chicago show beating up scalpers. So that's why there weren't any scalpers.
That is not a lie. He probably was. Look at this. Our buddy Rock and Roll Podcast. Dude, he says he was there. Rock and Roll.
There. He wants
Yeah.
to rub it in, Rock and Roll Videocast.
All right, Rock and Roll, you got to let me know if you were at the Master of Puppets one or if you were at the one that was not Master of Puppets, because honestly, that was the first time I had road tripped out of town for a show. Yeah. And it was the first time I was in Chicago. You introduced me to Gino's East Deep Dish Pizza, which to this day is an absolute love of mine. I've turned so many people onto that. But yeah, it was my first time out of town seeing the band. It was me, you, Andy, and Matt. And I tried to get us tickets to both nights, and the Master of Puppets night was like, boom, just sold out immediately. So we did see the other night.
Which was a great show, by the way. Like, that's the thing that, like, that's why I wanted to bring it up, is between this show and the Score show, which we're going to talk about, obviously the reason we're here. Score, I mean, I had forgotten, like, just what a great set list that was. And it's like that made me think of the Chicago show. And I was like, I want to look at the Chicago show and see what that set list looked like, because I remembered it being good. And it's like between those two shows, and like I said, you and I have seen quite a few shows together for Dream Theater.
Sure.
Those are two really good out of the shows that we've seen Dream Theater wise, including we should mention Chris Aiken, Heavy Metal Television CEO or whatever he is. Yep. You and I were at the show where Chris like lost his keys or whatever and had to stay for Dream Theater.
Yes.
He was not happy that night.
No,
so,
he was.
But out of all the shows that we've seen, including that memorable one where he had to stay and see Dream Theater against his will, out of all those shows that we've seen, the Score show and that Chicago show are probably two of my favorite Dream Theater shows that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think there was that excitement for me of seeing Dream Theater. That was actually only the second time that I had seen the band. Was that really? Chicago show. Yeah. And
I thought you were a fan though.
Seriously, like I get it. Like we bust balls relentlessly, but like, can't you at least be somewhat professional? I mean, you do right for.
I'm sorry, I am the guest. You're right.
Guys, in case you're wondering, this is what we do. Like, this is if he wasn't ripping on me, I think he had like some terminal disease or something. So, yeah, no, that was literally the second time I'd seen them, because the first time was on the Scenes tour. And then we made this plan to go see him in Chicago and stuff like that, and that whole thing went down. And I think, unless I'm incorrect, that the 6 Degrees tour was the first time that they did the evening with.
Yeah,
so we got nothing but them because we had 2 full sets because they came out and they did a bunch of stuff, and then the second set was the second disc of the record, 6 Degrees.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was at the Vic Theater. I still have not seen another Dream Theater show there. I've seen I think it's 4 shows now, either 3 or 4 shows at the Chicago Theater itself, but the Vic is not one that I've seen them at. And I don't ever see them playing it again, which is really weird because it was a cool place,
It was a cool place. I went there one other time to see Tom Petty playing with his band Mudcrutch. But you're right. I mean, out of all the places that we've seen Dream Theater, it was a great place to see them for sure. And the crowd was way into it. But, yeah. So that's just a little preamble. But yeah, back to your original question, which, believe it or not, even in my advancing age, I still remember what the question was that you asked. But yeah, they announced the show, I think, for Score at Radio City, you're right, probably a few months out. The thing I don't recall whether or not they announced, I don't know how quickly they announced they were going to be filming it, but I do know that once we found that out, we were very stoked that they were filming it. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind if that answers your first question there. Much later.
Very much so. Very much so. Sorry, show. Nice. So Rock and Roll says he was at both shows. So you lucky bastard, you saw Master of Puppets live. Yeah. The thing I remember about that is I was like, oh my God, they're playing. Are we going? Are we going? And we made a plan to go. And one of the things that always stands out to me, because people do this a lot now, and I thought I was original back then. Now it's kind of considered a dick move. But if you remember, I bought 2 pairs of tickets for the show. And I was like, okay, I think this is going to sell out. So I'm going to buy 1 pair of tickets. It's a good pair for us. Whatever I can get elsewise, I'm going to buy that and resell it later to help pay for the trip. And it actually worked. So
yeah, I would never do that because that's completely unethical and just total dick move. But I applaud you. It helped out with the trip.
It did, man. It paid for my part of the hotel, paid for some of the gas, the tolls, because we took your car.
Yes, we did.
So I was
foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing tales. I promise, guys, we're gonna get to the actual show, but we were there. So, I was driving your car, and it did help out a lot. I think if I remember the total, I want to say that the tickets themselves I got for about $140 for the pair, and I sold them for about $330 because I remember making almost $200. I was like, sweet, I got some money for gas and tolls and my half of the hotel room. So it was
your half of the hotel room, which was about 50 feet in total size.
It was, but you know what? At least we were there. And weren't we something like 30 blocks from Radio City? Because we had a lot of walking to do that weekend.
We did. There was a lot of walking. Not that I was complaining, but yes. In retrospect, there was a lot of walking.
I always remember that, it's over on such and such street. I'm like, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that a shitload away? And they're like, yeah. We're like, screw it, let's walk. We didn't feel like paying for a cab, It's 15 years ago, neither of us had well-paying jobs. We were doing okay, but we're on our own in New York City. We're like, yeah, we can walk. Our knees aren't blown yet, so.
Oh, no.
So Matt and I were there, and so we definitely want to dig into the record itself. We'll mix in some more personal stories and stuff, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on this right before we get into this.
Sure.
I've always kind of thought that this is their best live release. I get it that it's more monumental. It's the 20th anniversary, and we've got an orchestra and stuff. But things like Live at Budokan is phenomenal. Obviously, the 4-hour plus performance for live scenes at New York is great. But something about Score just kind of, and again, maybe this is just a personal attachment that I have to it because we were there, and I know you're an emotional guy, but you're not as emotional as I am. Let's be honest.
This is true.
Almost nobody is.
I'm sentimental, but not about this.
Yes. So, yeah, I don't know if it's just me. having that emotional attachment, like hanging out with you, one of my closest friends, like, and doing this road trip, and it being 20 years of the band and everything like that. But I think this is their best live release. Like, where do you stand?
I would tend to agree with that. That, like I said, like, I kind of forgot about how good this set list was. And it's like, and I almost really not almost really, I totally forgot that it was a 20th anniversary show, that was kind of like the occasion for it. And so it's just
Right.
like, they mixed in some cool stuff in the set list. I mean, like Another One, and just like, Raise the Knife. They're like, I think some of that stuff, I'm thinking of Raise the Knife specifically. There might be some of this stuff that is a little bit more common now, but it felt really special in the moment. And, anybody that's watching this, you all are diehard Dream Theater fans enough to know that, like, Mike Portnoy put such care and thought into the set list. And so I think that was one major reason that I wanted to go see this show, was because I knew that the set list was going to be epic, and it didn't disappoint. Like, and as I was like looking back at this, and as I was watching this last night, like, you're right. I mean, that's an excellent point. I really hadn't thought about it in that sense, but if I'm comparing it against the other live records, I would probably put this at the top or close to it, because, as you said, the Budokan is really great. I love the official bootleg that they put out from the 6 Degrees tour, which I think was Bucharest, maybe?
Yeah, I have that. Yes, I own that. I have that one. Yes.
Yeah, because I like that one, because that had the Great Debate, which wasn't on a lot of other stuff. So I think that Bucharest show and this show are probably my top two, with the Live at Budokan being number 3. But yeah, I'd put Score at the top. That's the really long answer that I'll just summarize and say, yes, John, you're right.
So real quick, and we'll go track by track here as we do.
Yeah.
So speaking of Raise the Knife, you had given me, God, it had to be a year or two even before Score, this data disc of nothing but like unreleased Dream Theater stuff.
Which somebody gave me. I would never participate in piracy like that. But yes, you're correct. Well, look at that. You still have it.
I still have it. This is the actual disc.
That's my handwriting. I'm so guilty.
Yeah, it's well, you shouldn't have said that, dude.
Going to prison.
But I had listened to all of it,
yeah.
And they get into Raise the Knife, and I was like, "Oh my God, this sounds familiar." And you bitched me out at the show. You're like, "This is Raise the Knife. It's on that disc I gave you." And I felt bad because I didn't recognize it immediately, and I started thinking, I'm like, "There's like 500 songs on that thing." Like,
fair point. Fair point.
This disc has the all of the unreleased Falling Into Infinity stuff, and that's where Raise the Knife came from. So I had heard it a little bit, but I was completely with you, because I was like, oh my God, they're really doing this. So as I mean, you've said it, the set list was absolutely incredible. The choices they did, again, doing Another One is awesome. I think there's only one clunker on here, and I would say it would be the choice to do Vacant, but I think that's kind of just like a time constraint type of thing.
Yeah.
Because everything else on, if you're not going to do Stream of Consciousness, like everything else is a good 8 minutes plus on Train of Thought. So what are you going to do? Especially something that heavy, you can't really put with an orchestra. So,
I mean, of course, the logical answer is to just do nothing from Train of Thought, but we differ on that point.
You are so not a fan. All right, so Joy Puzziani says, Score is my favorite because if I had a real orchestra play my music instead of MIDI, I would cry like a baby. I can only imagine how beautiful it was for them to hear it come to life. Yeah. We're gonna go through the show, but why don't we address that now? Like, sure. I'm gonna ask you, like, so you've always been kind of like I hate to say insider, because but you've always known stuff ahead of time. You've been in radio for years and years, like
Yep.
You mentioned our buddy Aiken. Did you know anything about the show beforehand? Like, did you know about the orchestra?
I didn't, and I did not want to get into that, but from what I remember, that was a complete surprise for everybody that was in attendance, because there was, maybe they hinted that there was going to be some sort of surprise, but like, out of all the things that I was thinking of, for whatever reason, being at Radio City Music Hall, which is an obvious thing, them coming out with an orchestra for the second set wasn't that. But it's like, when they came back for the second set and the curtain goes up or whatever and there's like a full orchestra, it was a moment. It was a definite moment. Like it's a moment when you watch it on the DVD. And I mean, you and I can assure the folks listening to this, watching this, that like it was just as much of a moment being there and seeing that unfold.
Yeah, I agree. It's because we heard the orchestral stuff start up, and the curtains were closed, and we thought, okay, wow, okay, like, oh, they're going into 6 degrees. Well, then all of a sudden they part, and you remember, like, it was like a wave. Like you could hear, like, the people up front got it first. You hear this wave of applause, just people go, what the hell? And then as it came, we're like, what the, oh my God. Like, and we looked at each other like, holy crap. And
my
like,
God, they killed Mike Portnoy, you bastard.
South Park moment. Oh my God. But yeah, it was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, Puziani, to your point. Yeah. To see that. And
her name is Joey, by the way. Joey Puziani. Get it right.
We're Italian. We call each other by last name. De Rosa Puziani. Okay. Like, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Drake.
De Rosa. Damn it. So, yeah. So, and then once it sets in, that okay, they've got an orchestra, and then we were kind of like, wait, if they're playing this, they've got to be playing like the whole damn thing. And that's when we were like, holy shit, are we going to really see all of 6 degrees? And we had, we kind of went, wait a minute, like, because we were at the show, I think it was 2 weeks before in Cleveland. It was one of the, if I'm remembering right, Cleveland was the second to last date before SCORE because Detroit was the other one. And they played Glass Prison.
Yeah.
Coming out of it. So we were expecting the Glass Prison. So when they came out with an orchestra and doing the whole big blown out thing, we're like, dude, you can't just play that one piece of music from 6 degrees. Like, you've got to be doing the whole thing. So when we realized what was happening, you and I were just absolutely, completely mind blown.
Totally.
And, yeah, it was. Yeah. So, Puziani, like, yeah, it was incredible. So, all right. So let's get into this track by track and give a few thoughts here. So, again, you and I had seen the show a couple weeks before. And one quick side note, we do have to give props to James Labrie because I don't know if you remember this, but he was sick with the flu. Back then it was called the flu. Like,
I don't remember that. Was he sick that night?
Yeah, he was sick. And there's a rumor that Petrucci was sick the night of SCORE because of what had been going around the band. They had all gotten sick. Well, if you remember, like, they closed with Learning to Live, or it was one of the last two, and he hit that super high, like, I think it's a C sharp is the note I want to say, and he hit it. And we found out later that he was actually sick, and he still nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. So that was incredible.
I didn't remember that. So I'm very impressed by that. I mean, especially knowing that, like, it was a great vocal performance throughout the night. Yeah,
yep.
Cool.
All right, so we get to SCORE, and obviously we knew kind of what to expect because we had seen the Activarium tour a couple weeks ago. So they get into Root of All Evil. It was awesome, and I think. It sounds kind of stupid to say, well, it sets the tone for the rest of the night, but there was this energy in the room. You and I, again, we were there, and it was a different energy, and I get it. It's like, this big show, but the energy never dissipated. And I've always thought that the Root of All Evil, it's a great song, but we on our show we've done like a ranking of opening, album openers.
Yeah.
And Root of All Evil is not that high for me. Yet the whole place was just absolutely like. Just going bonkers, and I don't think that ever stopped throughout the night. Like, how do you feel about that?
I think you're absolutely right about that. Like, is that why you do this, by the way, so that I can just sit here and go, "You're right, John. You're right, John," over and over throughout the night?
No, because that's never happened in our friendship ever. So
okay, all right. Well, we're changing the tone here tonight. We're the tide is moving. So
Right.
No, I think you're right, man. Like, and Radio City is like kind of a unique place to see a show to begin with. Like, it's very much like for anybody that like lives in Cleveland or anywhere that has like, say, like the place here in Cleveland where the orchestra plays is Severance Hall. And so wherever, the place is that your orchestra plays in your city, it's just not your traditional concert venue. The amplification tends to be different. And so that was the case. I don't know what you remember about that, John, but like, it was not going to your typical rock show. Like, there was more of like a natural organic feel to the sound in the venue. And that took like a minute to get used to. But the other thing that was kind of cool about it that I think kind of speaks to what you're talking about how that excitement never really dissipated throughout the night. like it felt like a really intimate place to see Dream Theater. So it's just like, we had really good seats. But really that was the case for a lot of folks in the venue. Like, it's just a great place to see it. It's one of those places that wherever you are in the venue, like it's a great place to see the band. Um, so, yeah, I know what you're saying about Root of All Evil as far as the opener. There was just something different about the night. Like, I do think that Portnoy's always been good about, like, structuring like a strong opening song for the set. But something about that song, like, because I kind of saw that, and it's like, I remember not being not very stoked about that song as an opener, or that song from the album in general. And that night, man, and even when I watched it back last night, I was like, it just sets a great tone for the night.
It hits harder than it normally would.
It does.
It's the one time you can look at Root of All Evil and be like, okay, this one's hitting. And I think you made an excellent point about the acoustics in the place, because it's like, and I think you can hear it if you either on the audio version or on the DVD version. I think you can definitely hear it. There's just a certain echo about the place, and I don't know if this is the way they captured it, orally, but it just sounds a little bit different and a little bit bigger.
I was gonna say it's not as fat of a sound as you might expect from some live DVDs. It's like it's got a different kind of makeup to it. Like some like a lot of live DVDs or live albums are just so like fattened up and in your face. And that's kind of what I like about this live record, is that they really left the natural sound of the room in the recording. They could have messed with it, and I don't feel like they really did that. They left it as it was.
Yeah, and I think there's really no other way to do it for this show. I mean, had they taken that out of it, like, and that's one thing that I kind of got out of it too. Revisiting this, preparing for the show, is that there is that ambience there, and to remove that kind of takes some of that energy out of it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Root of All Evil actually, it hits, man. I mean, it really hits. And again, like, that energy just never left. And, again, to your second point about it feeling intimate, like, it's a big place, like what's like 6,000 people, something.
So it's not small,
Yeah. But it really did feel like it was more personal. Like, I mean, you make a very good point there, because it really was. And again, a lot of this, I always wonder if my memories of this are tainted because we were there. It was like, it was a couple of buddies going on this, like, 8 hours there, 8 hours back road trip, doing all this crazy stuff in New York City. And so I wonder, like, am I just overreacting to it because I was there and it's like me and my buddy, or is it really that good? And I really think it really is that it was just that good, because I think other people, like, which obviously is millions and millions of Dream Theater fans, because there were only 6,000 of us that were there, they've reacted the same way to this. They've said that this is an incredible concert and all that kind of stuff. So, Shendeli, thanks for tuning in, man. He said, "Hey, John, huge fan of the podcast. I hope to catch more of the live ones." Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in, man. Glad you're having a good time. I appreciate you. Daniel Wilson says, "While I did not see Score, I did see The Astonishing at Radio City Music Hall, and the sound of that venue is incredible. Those intro drums from Mike Portnoy must have sounded huge for the Root of All Evil." Yeah. That was, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, it's coming. But it really did kind of boom. You're like, oh my God, this is gonna be great. Like, you really knew it was gonna be a good one. So, all right. So the second song, "I Walk Beside You." Where do you stand on this song in general? Because this is kind of a polarizing song for Dream Theater fans. I love it personally. I have a personal connection to it. That may be part of it. Again, the personal connection. But where do you stand with this?
Not one of my favorite Dream Theater songs, but it's interesting because, like, I don't think I probably haven't watched Score in maybe 10 years. It's been a while. And this kind of is an example to me of how sometimes a song works better as a song just where it is context wise in the set list. And I think that's the case here. I think that, like, coming out of the Root of All Evil, which has a certain intensity, "I Walk Beside You" is kind of like almost like I don't want to call it like an afterburner, but it's kind of the afterburner coming out of Root of All Evil. And it's just, I think it works well on the night. I'll skip ahead just a little bit and say that, like, "Spirit Carries On" is not normally one of my favorite songs. I think
wow.
I think that song as the set closer in this score show is incredible. So I just mentioned that to say that like I probably have the same amount of love for both of those two songs, Spirit Carries On and I Walk Beside You. Which is to say, like, they're not extremely high. I don't hate them, but it's like if you're asking me, hey, what should we put on Dream Theater wise? I'm probably not ever going to tell you those two songs. You know, like I won't pick those songs.
Okay, so you're saying like album wise, you're like, nah, but live in terms of the context of this set list, they were very well placed.
I dug it in the score set. Yeah, I think that I Walk Beside You. I think it fits well.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I loved it. Like again, I think obviously we knew it was coming. This one, even before I had an emotional connection to it with one of my best friends, like when the record came out, I was like, this is cool. It's like a catchy, kind of different for Dream Theater, kind of upbeat song. Like I dug it. So, to hear it live a couple times, I was into it. I thought it was fun. To your point, like putting it second in the set is cool because, coming out of the opening song, whatever the opening song is, the crowd's energy is going to be up. Yep. And this is an up song. So I think it was a brilliant choice to put second because it just keeps that energy up. So, I thought it was great. So let's get into one of the first curveballs of the night. Actually, it might be. Do you consider this the biggest curveball of the night outside of the orchestra?
I would say, yeah, I'm going to call it yes. Yes, John.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they did an old song like this at our show in Cleveland. I think they went straight into When Dream and Day Unite. Am I wrong in saying that? Because I don't remember seeing something this crazy. Because I don't remember either of us going, "What the hell?"
Where did they play in Cleveland, by the way?
It was at the Agora.
Okay,
we were on the floor. Yeah, we were on the floor.
Yeah,
but
no, I think you're correct. That's the short version.
Yeah, so
I'm editing myself along the way, John. I'm trying to help here.
You're used to interviewing people and like having to do transcription, so I give you a lot of credit for keeping it short-winded, especially with me, who I'm very long-winded myself. But
a recent radio appearance I did after the fact, the host said to me, "If I had to transcribe this, I'd be really pissed at you right now." So that's me.
That's awesome.
I'm never brief. Sorry, guys.
All right. Our buddy James Mazza's checking in. What's up, James? Thanks for checking in again, man. Much appreciate you. So another one, a Majesty song. Track bonkers. 3. Yeah, that was kind of crazy. Like when they, they had the video stuff and they don't show it all in, the score DVD, but the reverse order of, the pictures of the band and like, they're rewinding the video thing. And then they get to Chris Collins. It was like, what the hell? And they went into this. I was like, wow.
They did play another. They played another one in Cleveland at the show we saw. So we shouldn't have been that surprised by it. But I was surprised last night. I was like, all right.
You were surprised a minute ago.
But in reality, it turns out we saw it twice.
We are so prepared for this show. Yeah. Well, we were just having our minds blown. So,
by note, I did not recall we had seen them in Cleveland prior to seeing this show. So you really enlightened me on that one. So, what's it been 15 years? I can't believe I forgot that important detail. What a jerk.
But and to your credit, like basically every musical tidbit and nugget and album by anyone. Whereas I'm like, if it's Van Halen and Dream Theater and Queensryche and Pantera and Anthrax, I know all about it. So, all right. So they did play another one. I did not remember that again. Probably just got my mind blown. The first night, I'd be like, what the hell is this? But yeah, it was an amazing set choice to, it'd be very easy to just jump right in at When Dream and Day Unite, but to pull something out from the Majesty days.
Crazy.
It was great. And, it's funny, like, I don't know how far you watched into, the documentary on the second disc of Score. It's called The Score So Far, but the ending credits, they actually have them playing with Chris Collins doing the song, and then it's interspersed with them doing it at Radio City.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, nice. So it's like, and dude, it's really ironic, and that back in, God, it had to have been like 87 or whatever when they did it with Chris Collins. They weren't playing to a click track, and yet it was literally dead on the rhythm. It was almost like they were playing to a click track. Like I know it's a really goofy thing to say. Go watch the credits of a documentary on disc 2, but I mean, it's really weird. It's kind of creepy. Like it's dead on the rhythm with each other. I mean, it's really kind of crazy like that.
And that's on YouTube. So folks that haven't seen that, you can go check that on YouTube.
Yes. And if you'd like to watch that on YouTube as well, you might catch your host here, outside of Radio City Music Hall here at about 44 minutes. Yep,
there's a reason to sell the DVD and cancel your internet.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the glorious moment I've mentioned on the show that I'm actually in the documentary. And real quick before we move on, we can tell that story real fast. We were across the street from the venue. Do you remember this? We were at an ice cream truck. I do. Yes, we're across the street from Radio City, and we're getting ice cream. And I hear this big crowd cheer go up to my right, and I look over and I see like boom lights, and I was like, oh crap. And I always thought, I was like, I want to be on the DVD because I knew in the previous ones they had fans on. So I literally go bolting across whatever street it is, whatever the hell street it is. I'm like,
because we were in line, so you're like, dude, hold the place in line. I'll be back.
Yeah. And you're like, what? And I just go running, and I'm like dodging cars in like New York City traffic. And they were, they had clipboards of like release waivers and stuff, and they're interviewing people and they're looking around for people to talk. And I pulled up I was like, I got the Dream Theater tattoo. I got the Dream Theater tattoo. So they're like, all right, get on the camera. And they're like, well, are you a Dream Theater fan? I'm like, yes. Like, how often do you see them? And that's where this came from. So yeah. So if you want to go look it up, if you don't have Score, it's on YouTube. So there I am. Yeah. And I'm actually in the end. I couldn't pull it up, but at the end there's like a shot, like a video shot of the lobby. Yeah. And you're being very docile, but you can see me in the middle bouncing up and down. Just look for the guy in the backwards hat, and you can see my dumbass bouncing up and down.
What I like is that shot is preserved for posterity of you going, look, me, I have a tattoo, as you're wearing like your Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch hat. So,
I thought you would say that it's captured for posterity back when I weighed less than 200 pounds.
Well, that too.
So moving on.
Moving on.
Yes, moving on. So we were across the street and we did that. And, so they go from Another One and then they go into Afterlife. And I don't know about you. I'm a big fan of When Dream and Day Unite.
Yep.
I don't think you and I have ever talked about that record very much. Brian, my co-host, is not. Where do you stand on When Dream and Day Unite?
I like the record. I'll tell you, and apologies to Charlie, because I know that Charlie's like one of the nicest guys on the planet. I prefer the version that they did live with James, When Dream and Day Reunite. That was really kind of the version. Again, that's another one they sold as like an official bootleg. That's kind of the version that sold me in on that album. But I like that record. I think it's got some great songs. So yeah, I'm a fan. That's short version. John, I like the record.
You don't have to have a short version. You can pontificate it as much as you want. We're a Dream Theater show. Yeah, long songs, true. Long explanations.
Very true.
Yeah. I again, another bootleg that I own. Speaking of bootlegs, Score was actually the first time that they released the Dark Side of the Moon. They had the CD and the DVD, because you were in line for that, and I was in line for the sold out shirt.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was like the coolest thing ever, that I have this shirt. It's like sold out. Like, you can only get it here. And then like a year later, they had it for sale in their official store. I was like, damn you, Dream Theater.
Ain't that the way?
It really is. But yeah, I'm also a huge fan of that record. I think it's awesome. Afterlife, I mean, they had played it a few times, so it wasn't really so much of a deep cut. I think if you're really going for a deep cut at Score, you're going to do like Light Fuse and Get Away or something, or,
agreed.
But Afterlife was awesome, and it was a great song. And then, they go into Under Glass Moon. I think what are you going to pick from? There is no deep cut from Images and Words. Let's be honest.
Well, I'll tell you what you would pick, because I'm looking here at the Cleveland set list, and in Cleveland, instead of Under Glass Moon, we got Take the Time. So if I've got the choice, I'm taking Take the Time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, tough choice, isn't it? Because like you said, there are really no deep cuts on Images and Words. So it's just like, then it gets down into what's your preference. And so I like Under a Glass Moon, but if I had the choice, Take the Time would have been my choice.
Yeah, I mean, because they're not going to do Pull Me Under because it's too obvious.
Right, correct.
So if you're not, if it's either Under a Glass Moon or Take the Time, a lot of people might be like, Learning to Live. But in Cleveland, if I'm wrong, I swear I'm not wrong. They played Learning to Live.
They did last song of the encore.
Yep. So we got that. So that's pretty much
And how Dream Theater is that? I had forgotten until I was looking at the set list for Score. Like, they put out a live DVD that doesn't have Pull Me Under. Like, Pull Me Under is not in the set list. Like, that's so very Dream Theater and Mike Portnoy. Like, I don't know if they. Regardless, it's a cool ballsy move. That's what I thought.
Yep. Look at James Mazza. He's like, I would have picked Surrounded.
Really? All right, James. I can hang with that.
Not a bad choice. My buddy Brian.
Not a bad choice means he totally disagrees, James.
I don't totally disagree, but I think something more aggressive, is probably the way to go. All right, so another curveball.
Yeah.
Innocence Faded.
Which was great.
Yes. What did they play? Was it Caught in a Web that they played in Cleveland?
No, John. They played Innocence Faded in Cleveland.
You got to be kidding me. Well, you know what though? Okay. In both of our defense, I forgot the songs they played in Cleveland. You forgot they even played in Cleveland.
That's true.
So at least I'm only forgetting parts of the show.
Yeah.
Apparently we were. Now, again, we had already had tickets to the show at this time, so we knew we were going to New York City.
Yep.
So at this point, we're probably in the crowd going, we get to see this in 2 weeks. In New York City, we get to see this in 2 weeks. So, again, I can't believe
it's another one of my favorites from the show, though. Yes. It's just this is one of those that I don't know that I thought this at the time, but you know what? I do remember that just had a very buoyant feel seeing it that night. It was definitely one of the up points of the set where you're just like, man, yeah, there's just such a good vibe. And that's one of those tunes that really kind of just elevated the vibe. So
yeah, totally agree.
Very, very cool. So now if you were to say that there was a curveball next, you would actually be correct. And it would in fact be an actual curveball. I'm just helping you out there, buddy.
Yes. I know how to lead a show.
Right.
I'm getting better at this. I'm no Chris Aiken, but look,
true.
Our buddy Adam Rishog. Adam Rishog, what's up, man? He says, part of the reason I love Score so much, no Pull Me Under. Adam is a Pull Me Under hater. So
look at that. A hater, no less. Wow.
Yes. Not on our album ranking of album opening songs, his last place song was Pull Me Under. So
that's kind of harsh.
Yeah, a little bit. So let's just get into it. Again, one of the biggest curveballs of the night, Raise the Knife. And Talking Into Infinity is my favorite record, and I'm waiting for them to do something let's do Burning My Soul or Trial of Tears. I was hoping for Trial of Tears. That's my favorite Dream Theater song ever. And instead we get this, and again, like we were saying earlier, I was like, what the heck? And I was like, this sounds familiar. And you went, this is on that disc I gave you, you idiot. I was like, oh crap, I forgot. So
yeah, in Cleveland they played Peruvian Skies in this slot. So
yes.
To your point about Falling Into Infinity. So
yep. Kale McLeish, what's up, man? Good to see you. He says, I was hoping I didn't miss the knife chat.
Kale, you did not miss the knife chat. And in fact, I was about to pull an actual real knife and stab John.
So
raise the
rude.
Knife, indeed.
You were so mean to me.
I am.
I bring you on for a good Dream Theater chat. Instead, you crap on me for an hour and a half. So,
looks like this is the best. All right, fake knife. There we go.
There you go. I'll cut you with the audio disc I showed earlier that you actually gave me that has that song on it. So, yeah. So, man,
what a phenomenal curveball. That's the short version.
Yeah, and it wasn't even one of those things where it's okay, well here's a 5 or 6 minute banger. It's no, this is almost 12 minutes long. They went for something really progressive off of something that did not make the recording sessions, at least for the final album. And that was just
And here's the interesting thing. I'm cheating using the internet. They have played that song according to Setlist FM 15 times total, and the last time they played it was at this Radio City show.
Really?
Yep.
What the hell? We did it 14 times.
Well, I'm sorry?
So what the hell were the other 14 times?
I know. I mean, they played it at a show. Like, I think the first time it said that they played it was in '95 at a show in New Jersey. Which makes sense. But yeah, it's one that has not made a lot of appearances.
Man, 14 times. Man,
let's see. It looks like they played it a few times in 2005 and 2006. Those were the primary places where it popped up.
Well, that would have been on that tour.
Yeah. So they played it. They played it 8 times on the tour that we saw. A couple times overseas in Tokyo, Los Angeles, Chicago, Montreal, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, Boston, New York, but not Cleveland. So they were like, Cleveland, sorry, no great rarity for you. Here's Peruvian Skies. Suck on that.
Well, it's not like you and I would have remembered it anyway, apparently, as we've discussed.
No, that's okay, John. That's okay, John Mayo. I'm not even going to remember that I was at this Cleveland show, so you tried to insult me. I don't care.
God, we're so bad at this. Oh, my God. Oh, all right. So into a song that you said you're not the biggest fan of on the record, but makes an amazing set closer, which I agree with you completely on. The Spirit Carries On. I actually, I have to admit, I disagree with you on the album take. Like, I really like this song. I've always thought it's just one of those, it's like a masterclass in Dream Theater's ability to just do something straightforward with melody that still has a little bit of those progressive elements to it. And I absolutely love this song. Like, what is it to you that does not grab you about this as much on the record?
I was going to say, like, it's not that I don't like the song on the record. Like, it really has nothing to do with the record. Just like record or live. I would say just live more so. Live, it's not a song that I'm ever clamoring to hear. But in the context of the record, I mean, come on, man. I had the radio show where, much to the chagrin of Chris Aiken, my co-host, I played the entire album the week that it came out. Almost one of the big reasons for that was because I got the record, I listened to it, and it just like the whole thing, listening to that whole thing, it just knocked me out. Like, I was like, this is just great. And I was so moved by that. I was like, I got to play this entire thing on the radio show. And definitely part of that was Spirit Carries On, because as far as where it is on the album, like, they build a certain experience with that whole album that by the time you get to that song, like, you're just in such a mood that, like, it does what a good album closer should do. And I'm sorry, you don't know anything about this, John, because you've never achieved this, but it brings the record home, and I think it does so brilliantly. So that's basically what it is for me. Is live, it's just not a song that I ever really need to see. Not that I mind seeing it, but like, it's just not one of my, like, if I've got a choice between like for instance, if it's between The Glass Prison, The Great Debate, and a few other songs and Spirit Carries On, I'm going to pick all those other songs before I pick Spirit Carries On. Right. And if it's beyond the Spirit Carries On and the entire Astonishing record, I'll pick Spirit Carries On.
Don't even get me started, dude. Don't get me started on the Astonishing, because we're really going to go to blows on that one. So funny story. And then, so our buddy Chris Aiken, so we're going to send a quick shout out to him. So he actually is in the hospital with pneumonia, and he's tuned in. So I want you to tell a story about him real quick, because I'm going to go get a bottle of water, but I want to tell a quick story of my own. You mentioned playing the Scenes from a Memory record in its entirety on your show, The Metal Show, here in Cleveland. You and Aiken. Yeah. It was a 2-hour show. I was in my girlfriend's bedroom at the time, laying in her bed, and she's like, what are we listening to? I'm like, the new Dream Theater record's on the radio. She's like, all right, I'm going to listen to this. It must have been 10, 12 minutes. She was asleep, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, I'm just basking in this, and it just kept going and going. I'm like, this is glorious. And I was listening to it as you did that live. It was awesome.
Yeah, and the record wasn't out at that point, right?
No, it was that was prior. So that's my story. Okay, so I'm going to go get a bottle of water. I'm going to put you in solo mode. You have got to tell the story, since our buddy Aiken is in the chat here, and since we are technically at the intermission point of score.
Sure.
Tell the story of how Aiken lost his keys at the show and had to sit through 2 hours of Dream Theater because he mentions, I remember this, and me throwing pop bottles at Matt for the whole second hour. So yeah. So I'm going to put you in. So tell the story, because this is a great story, man.
Yeah. So the story, while Jon goes to get a bottle of water, is that I believe this was the tour, and Chris is going to be able to correct if I'm wrong, but like there was Megadeth and somebody else playing along with Dream. So no, wait, Queensryche. I know Queensryche was on the bill. Queensryche and somebody else, and so Chris had come out to see Queensryche. And whoever else was like also on the bill, and he had this solid plan, and he told us in advance that he was going to bail after those first two bands and he was going home. So something comes up that right around the time that he's going to execute his plan to leave and go home, instead he finds out that he doesn't have his keys, and that he is in fact stuck watching Dream Theater. And so he was incredibly upset. And I think, though, what happened, and now we'll just start telling lies, he watched the entire Dream Theater set from that point and became a lifelong diehard Dream Theater fan thanks to that show, thanks to that night. And that's not true. But it's a good story anyway. This is about the longest that this is about the longest that Jon has ever taken to go and get a bottle of water. I think this is a test. And I'm not doing a very good job of filling as Jon. I think Jon actually ran out to the convenience store. So now I think I should start telling stories about Jon. So let me reach inside my bag for the most embarrassing story I can possibly get about Jon. Okay, that's it. We don't have enough time for all the embarrassing stories about Jon. So is that you coming back, Jon? Or am I stuck here now?
Look at you. Soloing by yourself.
It was getting awkward. Thank you.
Well, see, you kept saying all night long, you're like, well, trying to keep things short. And the one time I'm like, well, now you can go off. You didn't go off.
It's kind of a short story because I got into the story. I'm like, there's some parts of the story I don't quite completely recall. So that's where it kind of fell apart.
Well, why did I bring you on? You don't remember anything.
I do need to say though, I was going to say this without even knowing Chris was in the chat, because that same story that I told you about, being on with the radio host that was like, if I had to transcribe this, I'd be really pissed at you. So that same radio host was telling me the story about how he's like, you and I are doing what we should be doing. He's like, because you're a really good writer, and he's like, and I'm on the radio, and he's like, I wanted to be a writer, but he's like, it didn't really work out. So I gave him kind of like the pep talk, and I told him, I'm like, here's how this started for me. And this is always a great story that I enjoy telling people. Really, the reason that I do what I'm doing is because of Chris. And that is, Chris, as you and I know, he had that news, the paper, Music's Bottom Line.
Sure. All right. So, anyways, so before we get into that, Matt doesn't realize I just took him out of the stream. Take that. I can actually shut you up for once in my life. Yes. Anyways.
I like that. That's awesome.
Sorry. I had to bust on my buddy's nuts. So anyway, he had Music's Bottom Line. Yes.
So he had Music's Bottom Line. So, not too long after he came down and started doing the radio show with me, at one point he says to me, he's like, hey, would you like to write for Music's Bottom Line? And I said, dude, I'm not a writer. And he's like, you talk to people on the radio. He basically made the point that you interview people on the radio. He's like, it's the same thing as what you do on the radio, interviewing people. He's like, you just write it out after you talk to them. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. And so I don't know if my first interview was Rick Springfield or Sammy Hagar, but regardless, those were the first, couple that I did, followed by Neil Sean from Journey. And you can identify with this as well, because like those three artists that I named off are three of my like favorites.
Yep.
And that was what was, great about Chris, was that, for me and for you and just everybody else that like, wrote for Music's Bottom Line, like he really made it happen as far as like giving us a chance to talk to like just our favorite musicians and bands. So it would have just been enough, the fact that he gave me a chance to talk to Rick Springfield and Sammy Hagar and so on. But yeah, man, that was, what kind of like just, kickstarted, me doing what I've been doing now for the past, almost, I would say 25 years or so. So,
yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And, and we'll get into the second half of Score here in a minute, but I mean, like, your hookup with him actually led to me getting hooked up a little bit, because there were interviews that you and he passed on to me.
Yep.
The Sammy Hagar one in 2002, I was one of the first people that he ever told, yeah, I would get back together with Van Halen. It's, of course, me, I'm like crapping my pants because, Van Halen's my favorite band.
Sure.
So, I mean, there was that. And, Jason Newsted, right after he left Metallica, I got to talk to. You guys passed that one on to me. And,
yeah.
And Dream Theater. I mean, I talked to Dream Theater, and I'll tell this on another show. But, I talked, it was the 6 Degrees tour in Cleveland, and I talked to James LaBrie for a good 45 minutes, and it was one of the most incredible conversations I've ever had, especially with a musician. And it just, cemented my fandom of the band with, how cool he was and the different stuff he was telling me. Like, it was like a 20-minute interview and then 25 minutes of him telling me all of his singer tricks, because I was like, well, how do you sing for 3.5 hours and stuff? And again, I'll save that for another show. But yeah, I mean, Aiken definitely hooked, he hooked you up. He definitely hooked me up. I mean, it's,
and we learned what he put up with when you, essentially you and I and your brother AJ took over Music's Bottom Line. When we took that over, we kind of learned what he, dealt with, like putting up with all the writers, because the story.
Yes. Yes.
And this was like a valuable learning lesson for me, because the thing that like all this made me think of suddenly, and I'm like, why would I do this? And I'm like, oh, that's right. The reason I did this was because we had all taken over Music's Bottom Line. So what I did was, there was an REO Speedwagon interview on the table, which I'm a fan, so I can't tell you why I wouldn't have done the interview myself. I thought you got a water. That looks like a Bud Light or something. Is Bud Light water now?
I do have a Bud Light. I just chugged a bottle of water, but I have another bottle of water over here. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so there was an REO Speedwagon interview on the table, and we had like the guy from Music's Bottom Line that was kind of like the quote unquote classic rock guy. And so I reached out, and he's like, well, I'm not really an REO Speedwagon fan, but I, suppose I can do the interview, but I'm going to need some sort of music. And this is before streaming. So I took my CD copy of the REO Speedwagon greatest hits, and I mailed it to the guy. And like the day that he gets it, he's like, hey man, I don't want to do the interview. And he never gave the damn CD back.
Well, luckily for you, REO Speedwagon's greatest hits is not difficult to find. It's a little popular,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just, I know that we had other experiences, and this is a Dream Theater podcast, so that's not about that. But like, suffice to say, we've had some fun times with Chris. That's the short version. There you go.
Yes. A lot of good times. So now that the intermission is over, literally on our show.
Yeah. And complete with a side trip discussion intermission.
Yes. That was the cool intro or intermission video that they show all the time.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't half as cool as the intermission video. I'm sorry.
Oh, so this is where the orchestra comes in. I want to bring up one thing and see if you remember this about Radio City.
Yeah.
So do you remember the guy in front of us that was farting his ass off? So Matt and I are sitting there, and it's through most of the first set, and someone is just absolutely destroying. I mean, like, both of us, like, when it first happened, we looked at each other like, what the hell, dude? Like, oh, and you're like, it's not me. I'm like, well, it ain't me. And it kept going on, and finally it got so bad, I actually hollered out in the song break. I'm like, who the fuck is doing that? Stop it! And it stopped, but it had to have been a good half hour. Some guy just, I don't know what he ate, but it was disgusting. And we got back from the, we did the intermission. We get back to our seats, and we're like, please God, let this guy not fart like during the second half of the show. But I don't know, like, again, you can't remember that they even played in Cleveland, but I'm sure you remember eating this guy's ass basically for.
I recall it differently, and basically what I recall is that like you like complained, and I was like, dude, I don't smell it, and you just like went off. You're like, you don't fucking smell that, blah blah blah, and so you just lost your mind. And
it was disgusting.
I remembered it being at the end of the show, which is why you were even more upset, because you were like, dude, you were like, dude, this has been going on the entire show and you didn't smell any of that. I'm like going, no, sir, sorry, I did not. And
at the end of the show, I did ask you that. At the end of the show, I did ask you that, but it was in the first set because I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was gross. It was disgusting. I'm like, and thankfully it did not continue. So, but yeah, so I had a gross surprise at the end of the first set, but then we had an amazing surprise at the beginning of the second set. And as we talked about earlier, talk about how, like, your response when the curtain came up and we saw the orchestra. Talk about your reaction.
I was just floored, man. Full stop. I was floored.
Yep. I know that you and I looked at each other like, oh my God, like, what the hell?
I could not believe that they were going to play Pull Me Under with a full orchestra.
That's for you, Adam Rishog. Yeah, I remember it coming up and you and I just going, what the hell? And then all of a sudden, like, as they're going through it, we kind of like realized, like, man, if they wouldn't just play the intro to 6 Degrees, like, and you can't just play part of 6 Degrees. We were like, oh my God, they're going to do the whole thing. Like, especially when
they're very technical, by the way. They note that that's the only live performance of the overture. Thanks, geniuses.
The Octavarium Orchestra, Jamshid what the hell is his last name? Jamshid, whatever.
Is the person in the chat so you can just like ask them? No, huh?
Yeah. The
orchestra conductor's not there. I do have the liner notes. So I suppose I could actually look and see what. All right, so
you're all prepared for this, man. This is great.
I'm
Jamshid Rashifi, I think.
If only it said here in the liner notes. By the way, you saw the show in Cleveland. It doesn't say that.
How the hell you forgot that? I have no idea.
Yeah, so I think you're
Jamshid Rashifi.
Jamshid Sharifi. How the heck
Sharifi?
Do you
there you go.
How do you know that?
Dude, I know some nerdy stuff. Like, you know nerdy stuff about basically every band, but there's certain bands I know more nerdy things about than you do.
I mean, if you would have asked me who arranged and conducted the orchestra for that show, I would have been like, John, I don't know. Who cares?
Yes. I'm a special features freak, man. I love special features. I'm in their documentary on this one. I should have been in the special features of his drum instructional DVD. I should have been on drums with him at Madison Square Garden, and I didn't. And so, again, stories for a later show.
So here's one for you, smart guy. Who played the B-flat clarinet that night?
Really? That's what you're going to do? Obviously, it's Frank Maroney.
That was Ole Matheson, by the way.
Oh, you could tell though, dude. Ole's got this sound. Like, Ole's always had this sound on the B-flat clarinet. Like, you could.
He's the John Mayung of that orchestra for sure.
He is. I mean, Ole's got that tone, man.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Now we're really, but we're getting. Why did I think that we would stay serious the whole time on this show?
If there's one person that knows who that is and is pissed right now, it was worth it.
It'll probably be Ole himself.
That's my cousin, jerk.
Yeah. Damn it, I played the hell out of that B-flat clarinet. All right, so they played the entire 6 Degrees thing. So when I rewatched the show on DVD, I haven't watched it in a while.
Do you think Aiken has asked for more morphine by now? Or is he still looking?
Probably. He's just trying to breathe right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so when I rewatched it, full disclosure, Rock and Roll Podcast wants to know, who played the tambourine?
Who played the tambourine? Rock and Roll, I don't have that answer for you, but I can tell you that it was, we've been getting questions about this. So it was Pamela Sklar who played the flute. And also Bob Carlisle, I'm not making this up, he was one of the French horns. I don't know if that's the same Bob that did that Butterfly Kisses song. Somebody will have to let us know.
See, I told you know everything about so many bands. Like, you could actually do that. Like, Cale McLeish, you know who played the tambourine? James Labrie. Cale, you're always there to bail us out in a pinch,
better.
man.
I thought he was going to say your mom or something,
Might as well, man. So, all right, so they do 6 Degrees, and when I rewatched it, like, I have follow me here because it sounds stupid for a quick second. So I have a PlayStation VR helmet. And I've discovered a year and a half ago when I got it, like, you can actually watch regular stuff in there, and it's kind of like being in a movie theater, like, as close to the screen as you possibly can be without it feeling like you're as close to the screen. So I watch a lot of concerts in there because it's like you're just completely in an isolated environment. And so when I rewatched Score, I did that. And it's something about the performance of this song, like the band's energy picked up, the crowd's energy picked up, and everybody was already, I hate using the word again multiple times, but up.
Yeah.
But something about the performance, the whole thing just went up another level, and you can hear it. And to experience that way, to watch the way the band was reacting and the crowd and everything, it was incredible. I mean, I think I'm interested to get your opinion on this. I think this was the best decision they made for the whole show. I mean, I get it. You have another one. You've got Raise the Knife. Throughout the tour, they did other things. We got Innocence Faded 2 shows in a row. We didn't know that. I really think that this was an absolutely brilliant choice for them. Not just because they had the orchestra, because you can have an orchestra and do other, you can pick other things to do. But to do this, like when you're at this epic show, and they even say like, we thought there's basically nobody from New York at the show because there's so many people from out of town and out of the country and everything. Like, if you're going to do an epic show, you do one of the most epic things you can. And to do 6 Degrees in its entirety, I thought was absolutely the most brilliant thing they could have done. Like, do you share that opinion? Like, where are you at with that?
I do. Yeah, I think so. Of course, the ultimate flex move, like that something, that somebody like, Pink Floyd would have done would be to have like a full orchestra and only use them for one song. But, they were probably more rational about it.
Right.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, I thought you know what, like, I think that just the appearance of the orchestra there at the beginning of the second set, like, you're right. Like, as soon as they start playing the overture, it's like they're playing the overture. They have the entire orchestra there. It's like, all right, if they have the entire orchestra there, they're going to do the whole thing. So I thought it was like really a brilliant move. Obviously, probably driven by the fact that they wanted to like capture the entire thing and have it represented on the DVD. So I'm sure there was that. They were like, we've done this entire suite, so we should really play this entire suite and have it on film.
Yeah.
But whatever the motivation, because I mean, this, John. You've put together so many set lists. Like, that's a big chunk of the set list to give away. So
yeah,
it's got to be a quality piece, and it's not like this was like the current record they were touring at the time. So certainly they had some distance from it, and it's like that's kind of another thing that kind of makes this special is that like a lot of times when they've just spent however long like touring that record and playing those songs, like they're not necessarily inclined. This was still pretty close to that record. They're not necessarily inclined to like go, okay, we're going to film this DVD, around the Octavarium album. Let's like give a big chunk of the set to that 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. That's not the most logical move on paper. But in terms of it's, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think it's like, even like, being a 20th anniversary show, I think it's kind of an interesting play. Like it plays out so well now that we're watching this, but I wonder if there was debate at the time that they were putting this set list together for the DVD show about how much real estate in the set list they were giving away by playing that.
Yeah,
because it works perfectly, but it's just like you're sacrificing a big chunk of the set list.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like given the band's history since then, I think that kind of like that adds an interesting layer to your question as well, because it's like, I mean, if Portnoy's still in the band now, we wouldn't be sure, but considering he's not in the band and they've all made comments, that everything's all hunky dory between everybody, but they have made reference to the fact that he was kind of a control freak. So you wonder if it was kind of like one of his, well, we're going to do this. Like maybe they were like, do you think we should really do this? Yeah, we're going to do this. Like, so was the rest of the band cool with it? Like that you bring up a very good point in asking that question.
And these guys are Rush fans, so, Rush like was always good about like documenting stuff. So it's like, it's easy to see the entire band being on board with it because it's like, all right, well, we documented scenes from a memory that's been done. Like, it's like, if you go through like kind of like the Dream Theater, like history, it's like they really already had like a lot of the history documented with live records. Like that was kind of a big logical whole if they were looking to like keep things, represented. That was kind of this was a good way to kind of mark that one off and have that represented in the live recordings.
Yep. And you're exactly right, because I mean, you mentioned earlier the 2004 show where they did the 15th anniversary of When Dream and Day Unite, and they specifically recorded it. Have they've been on record as saying they recorded it because they don't have the master recordings to the Mechanic Records release of that album. That they did that show and recorded it specifically so that they have like a professional recording of it with James LaBrie as the singer and modern production and all that. So, that very well could be. It might have been, not so much this is a curveball from Mike Portnoy, so much as a calculated move to say, well, I want this on, And I mean, to your point, if you look at the track listing on the CD, it is not broken up into the 8 or 9 different parts. It's one 42-minute piece of music.
Yep.
It could very well be, man. So question for you, because I have not heard of this. So let's see if you've heard of this. Our buddy Daniel Wilson, going back to Under a Glass Moon, what is the story with John Petrucci's guitar not working properly? On the DVD, they covered it up really well. And JG3, what's up, man? Good to see you. Says, oh, yeah, I forgot about the guitar not working thing. What was that like live?
This is rough. Like, he's expecting us, like, I didn't remember seeing the band in Cleveland, so he expects me to remember that a guitar didn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as what happened, we all know that James LaBrie sabotaged Petrucci, and there was a fist fight backstage about that. That's not true. That didn't happen.
Look at you killing people about this, man.
Like, I don't.
They're looking. They're turning to us for actual knowledge, and you're spreading falsities.
No,
like, what
I
are
know.
you doing?
I know, right? I got to be honest. Like, to the point of what they said in the chat, it was covered well because it was not something I noticed on the night.
Yeah, I didn't either. I'm trying to think if there was anything related to that, and that
the whole thing seemed pretty like Dream Theater flawless to me the whole show on the night. So that's interesting. I did not recall that happening.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that was weird to me, which was something that was always weird to me around this time, was Jordan Rudess with the wall of plugs, like an old school like phone thing, like when you're in like the 40s, like, like I've never understood what that was for, like. And that was the only thing I remember, and the only reason I remember that is because every show I saw him on that he had that, I was like, what the hell is that? Like, you've got all these keyboards, but instead you've got like, what are you, like a party line in the 30s or something? Like we're in the Great Depression? Like, like what is that thing? That's the only thing I really remember that's wonky.
I loved his like rotating keyboard stand, that like looping back to Root of All Evil. That was like one of the things that like, I had forgotten just about, like when you see a Dream Theater show, the way they opened up with Root of All Evil, and you got just Jordan there looking like a badass, like moving his keyboard back and forth. Like, he's like, he comes, and folks know this, but it's like he comes, from somewhere in the Dixie Dregs lineage. But out of like the keyboard players they've had over the years, he was a really good and key addition to that band. I think that he brings a lot. And just you talk about how analog he was at that show. Like, he's a really interesting dude. And I don't think that we knew as much about him at the time because he was kind of sort of still a relatively recent addition to the band. But he's just one of those guys that as the years pass with Dream Theater, he continues to get more fascinating to me.
Yeah. See, we might have to have you on when we do our keyboard episode where talk about like the key guys, because like I'm a Sharinian guy, and
Sharinian is a badass for sure,
dude.
I forgot he was in the band.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I was going to make a similar joke with Kevin Moore, but it presented itself. So there we go.
Kevin Moore, psychiatrist, MD, or whatever the heck it is.
Is that what he is these days?
Yeah. Have you not seen that?
I haven't seen that. That's great.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude. Oh my God. I'm going to try and pull this up like as we're talking.
He's a pretty like legendary, like I always heard he was like kind of an a-hole. So it's, if he is really an a-hole in real life, that it's kind of funny that the major a-hole becomes a psychiatrist.
It is weird. And the funny thing is, like, if you see him, like, I'm trying to pull up the picture right now, so I don't want to.
He's like sitting there on the couch going, "So tell me about your feelings." He's going, "Tell me about your feelings," and in his head's going, "I don't give a shit." But you know what? Yes, tell me about your feelings.
Yeah, but it's like, Like you could tell it's him. And okay, let's see if I can blow this up to full screen, dude. He literally is an actual like psychiatrist. Like, all right, how do I zoom
I
this
can't
thing?
wait to see this. If we get the blue
it's
screen of death, that's just Jon trying to blow up his screen.
No, it's gonna be blurry, so I apologize. And to those of you guys listening on the audio version, I apologize. But yeah, he literally is an actual like psychiatrist. Like
That's
it's
awesome.
yeah, I mean, and you can there you go. Yeah, I mean, you could tell it's him too. I mean, it's crazy.
He looks a little unhappy that he's not, making how much ever money, per gig. He's got the unhappy psychiatrist face.
It's like I don't want to be an ass or anything, but it's like
Too late. I've already taken it down that road. I'm influenced by Aiken being in the chat.
I know, right? Dude, I would love to just like schedule an appointment with him for no reason and just use Dream Theater references and see how many, like if like 2, 3, 4 minutes, how long it would take for me to get booted out of his office.
Yeah,
like if I had
Kevin,
fuck you money,
Kevin,
like I would do
it. It was the test that stumped them all. I just had this war inside my head, and I knew I was about to crash, so I thought I'd call you.
These feelings, I just felt like I was surrounded. Like I felt like I was
I've been
surrounded.
in this solitary shell for weeks now, Kevin. And the other night, I was like, I know I'm going to raise the knife. I gotta call Kevin.
But I just these feel I'm scarred from this. I'm scarred from it. Like I feel like I'm caught in a web of just like
All these
but I can't.
I just feel vacant, Kevin. Don't you hear me? It's the root of all evil. It's right there.
See you're doing it
trying
right.
To pull me under.
See,
that's one from your era, Kevin. I mean, never mind, Kevin.
See, again, you're doing it right. You're mentioning songs from eras outside of his. Meanwhile, I'm doing nothing but images and words and awake references. So like, I'd be booted in about like 60 seconds. You would at least last like 4 minutes.
Yeah, he'd be like, "What's this guy?" And he's looking up the Dream Theater discography because he has a hunch. All of a sudden, he's like, "That son of a bitch."
See, Cale McLeish, do you actually think you need to be here, or was this just a lie? James Mazza, look, my appointment's at 6 a.m.
Kevin, don't tell me what all my other therapists have tried to tell me, which is that the spirit carries on. That's bullshit.
Oh my God! I see.
I like that though. Yeah. That's great. My appointment's at 6 o'clock. That's fantastic. 5 stars.
James Mazza, there you go. You got the props from Matt Wardlaw from Ultimate Classic Rock. There you go. Oh my gosh! All right, so we get to obviously 6 Degrees. They go through it. We talked earlier. Vacant. I think that was kind of like a filler. That was like the kind of like the the pee break type of song. The next two, okay. And I forgot this until I rewatched it. They have 9 songs on Octavarium. They actually did 5 of the songs at this show. So it was like over half the record. The Answer Lies Within, I kind of think to me, it's filler as well. Where do you stand on that?
See, I like that song a lot. There we go. Podcast over. I ruined it again.
Explain.
No, I mean, I think I can see what you're saying about filler. I do see that, in a sense, but I don't know. Is there anything coming in chat wise? Am I alone on the island for liking The Answer Lies Within? I don't know. I think it's for me, it's, and I know
chime in, guys.
This does not jive well with what I said about Spirit Carries On, but like, just vibe wise, I think that it's very much in that same vein. I've always kind of liked the I don't know, moody / sentimental / inspirational type of songs, and so certainly on the inspirational tip, Answer Lies Within kind of falls in there. So it falls in the type of songs that I typically like. So it's got interesting placement being right next to Sacrifice Sons, which is just a completely different kind of thing. But no, I like it a lot.
Okay. I am not the biggest fan. I thought the 2 ballads on Octavarium were kind of okay, but it's like kind of those like stock kind of, especially against the rest of the stuff on Octavarium, which obviously we're going to get into here quickly.
I did not love Octavarium as an album.
Okay.
This was a good example of seeing the tour really sold me on the record. I liked this record
Okay.
a lot better after seeing the tour, and to this day, like, I mean, it's somewhere high on my list of records that I like a lot from Dream Theater.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because like in revisiting Score, I realized like this is one of my more favorite records, and I never really thought of it that way. It's kind of like a forgotten album for me, but there really are a lot of high points, and it's very, they always described it as, well, we're going to go back to our roots. So here's our progressive roots. And it really does kind of feel that way. And I didn't realize how much I liked it until revisiting this record. So I think we kind of have the same experience, just like years apart.
There was filler on this record when you want to talk about filler, like, and I think it's kind of telling. Oh, it's telling. It's telling that that These Walls and Panic Attack, that those two songs aren't in the set list for this Score show, because just like I think that one or both of those was even kind of like the quote unquote singles that were sent to metal radio. And it's just like, I don't know, man. I just don't think they're very good songs like next to the rest of the record. So I don't know. And I think it says a lot that they're not here on the set list. They were not in Cleveland.
I knew that you were going to go to These Walls, and I want to drop you out of this so bad again.
It's just like if I say something bad about Forsaken, right? Like,
Well, it's a whole nother episode. Look, you're basically campaigning to be a third host. I see what's happening now. All right, well, okay, so Sacrifice Sons.
Yes.
I am not sure how to feel about that song in terms of the context of Score. I thought it might have been a little bit superfluous.
Or maybe even heavy, as in like heavy, not heavy as in like hard rock heavy. Like topically, it's a heavy song for a show like this.
That is exactly where I was going to go. Like, I feel like it wasn't necessary, but I kind of feel like they did it because obviously it's a 9/11 song and you're in New York. So I don't know how necessary it was. I mean, it's a good song. I mean, it's not a great song, but I kind of felt like, okay, is it here because we're trying to fit more of Octavarium in, or is it here because we're in New York City and it's a 9/11 song? Like, and believe me, I mean, we're 2 days away from, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and God bless everybody. Like,
yeah,
I'm a huge believer in, the history of all that. But I always wondered, even back then, like, I'm like, okay, we were almost 5 years removed from that. And I was like, okay, like it kind of felt like after the ballad, after The Answer Lies Within, it kind of felt like a good place to like raise it back up. And then they went into Sacrifice Sons. I was like, okay, like it was an interesting choice to me. I'm not against it, but
it's heavy, but it's a very powerful song. It's obviously got a very powerful message.
Yeah.
And I think that when I look at that slotted right next to Octavarium, like, I mean, obviously Octavarium is its own, like, kind of just, has its own intensity. So I don't know, man. I remember that's one that I mean, I had nothing to compare it to because they didn't play it in Cleveland. So it's not like I'd already seen it in Cleveland, which, enough said. But that's one of those that, as I was like looking back at this show before I even watched it, I remembered that being very good on the night, and it was just as powerful of a moment when I watched it back as it was, being there. And I think that, again, not being entirely pro Octavarium on that tour, I didn't go into it going, gosh, I hope they play Sacrifice Sons. So it's like, when they started playing it, I think there was this moment like, okay, this is kind of familiar to me. Which song are they playing? And then, like, kind of once I connected it with, Octavarium, then I was just like, man, this was definitely one of those songs that, as has happened with me and bands, like sometimes you're just like, wow, I completely missed the impact of this song on the record, or just missed the song in general, and this song really caught me on the night. So
yeah,
I don't know. This is another one that I can see them just wanting to, document it and have it on a live record. But who knows? I hadn't thought about the New York element of things. That's very plausible as well.
Yeah.
I didn't see them talk about that after the fact. I mean, you and I would have to kind of go back and read some interviews that they did around the time of Score. Maybe they talked about it. Yeah, the 9/11 thing is a very interesting point. I could see that.
Yeah. Like I said, I've always been torn on that. And I really do enjoy the song. You made points earlier in the show about where you place things in the set list, and I felt like, and this sounds so heartless because of the subject matter and where it was performed. Maybe earlier in the show, it's weird. If you're talking about flow of a show, I think it would have been better earlier in the show. But I get that, in New York City, to put it near the end, especially where we're going here in a minute.
Yeah.
I get it. Again, I will go back to one thing though, man. They played over half of the Octavarium record, and to do that, I get it. On other nights of the tour, that's awesome. I never expected them to do that at the Score show. I really thought that they would have done less of the new record and kind of balanced it among their whole career. And I have to give them a lot of credit for not doing that. It was I think you phrased it as that's so Dream Theater to do something, and in a way it's kind of so Dream Theater to everyone goes to the show, travels from Chile and Venezuela and Puerto Rico and all these different places to come to Score, and instead of just doing one from here, all this deep stuff, they pretty much stuck to the script and only added a few curveballs they hadn't done on the rest of the tour. I think that's kind of, in hindsight, it's kind of, we didn't know that at the time, but I think now, in hindsight, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, a couple points. One, and I've talked a lot about this to myself, of course, with this being the 30th anniversary of Van Halen's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. That's kind of the subject that kind of made me think of this year, but I've always respected bands that do a good amount of the current record when you go to see them live on that tour, rather than just playing a solitary one or two songs. Dream Theater, much like Van Halen, has always been good about that. So I think that's part of why you see a good amount of Octavarium in the set list here, and I respect that. The other thing, looking at the track listing for Octavarium, something that perhaps neither of us are thinking about that comes clear when I look at the track listing of Octavarium, Sacrifice Sons and Octavarium are back to back on the record. So from a sequencing standpoint, they're that way on the record. So that might just be an arc that Portnoy just was like, man, this is really cool on the record. I want to see if this plays out as well, live as it does on the record. So that might be it right there, is that they were just, from a sequencing standpoint, just doing it that way.
Yeah, very, very good point. I never thought of that.
Also, I didn't know this record was 75 minutes. Octavarium. Anyway.
Well, and 25 of it is what we're about to get into.
Look at that segue.
See, and thankfully, I'm not as good as you, but I've learned segues, so I can follow a segue when I'm given one. So there you go.
There you go.
I just shit on a segue, but what the hell?
By the way, we set that up.
The hell we did.
You were like, talk about the sequence of the record. I'm going to take that right into talking about the title track. All right, go ahead, God.
God, I wish we could say we're that smart.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to put this out there. After having rewatched and re-listened to Score on both video and audio, the live performance of Octavarium on Score is the greatest live song they've done they've released.
Yeah.
It's the energy is there. The way the video thing is one thing, because there's the different camera shots and everything, and of course they bring in the animations, which I always thought the animations, on those few tours they did them were absolutely amazing. Those are great. Labree's vocal performance on this is just absolutely incredible. And
the climax when he gets to that just Octavarium. Oh my God.
That scream. Yep.
So badass.
Yep. I I really think that this is like the peak of his peak years. Like this is like, this was really Octavarium was like the peak of him at his, he had a few albums where he was like at the peak of his powers, and I think this was it. The whole band was just absolutely on point. The orchestra was feeling it. It's just the whole thing just came together. I mean, the song itself, when you listen to Octavarium, I think there's very few Dream Theater fans that would say, well, I'm not really into that song Octavarium. I think if you're a Dream Theater fan, it's one of those crazy long songs that we can all agree on that song kicks ass.
Yeah.
And this just took it to another level, which I think is difficult to do. There's you know a lot more about music than I do. You know a lot more about different releases and bands and all this stuff. I think that this is one of those performances, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it really, I mean, it doesn't just elevate it, it takes it to a different level on a song that already is on another level.
Sure.
So, I mean, can you compare it to anything? Again, you write for Ultimate Classic Rock, you know about every single band there is to know. Like, is this comparable to like one of the greatest live performances that you've seen or that you're aware of?
I think absolutely. And what's surprising to me, looking at this is another one that they have not played it live since that Radio City show. Like, are you kind of surprised that they haven't, like, again, I know it's long. It's like, 20, 24, it's 20 plus minutes.
Yeah.
But are you surprised? Like, they have been pretty good about like just spiking in things, from all eras. Like, I'm very surprised that allegedly they haven't pulled that out since 2006. That's very surprising to me.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised about that as well. They've done Change of Seasons, obviously.
Yeah.
They've done Count of Tuscany.
Yeah.
And they've done, the Illumination.
Have they done any pieces of this that it shows that you've seen? Have they done parts of it?
No. Mm-mm.
I don't get that.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones that it's got to be either all or nothing, and they have not. So, I mean, that's the one thing that kind of sucks is like, they pulled out Nightmare to Remember on the last tour, so they're trying to go back to that kind of stuff. And we've heard Count of Tuscany, and like, so if they didn't, if it was still an evening with, even though, the title track of the new record, A View from the Top of the World is 20 plus minutes, you wonder if maybe they don't have that in their back pocket somewhere, but we're not going to hear it obviously for this tour, and who knows when. So
what did Portnoy leave in 2010?
2010. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing. Fans out there. There's no reason I actually pulled that out. I can't remember that was at the Cleveland show. So we'll just go back to that one more time.
You have all these set lists. You have all these details. Like, wait, when did Portnoy leave? Of all details, the simplest.
I think for a lot of fans, that's a minor detail, John. A lot of people didn't even notice he was gone.
Well, don't go on message boards.
Message boards. What are those?
So anyway,
just everything I'm trying to connect, like why they wouldn't have played this. Like, it's not like it's on like the album that then the guy leaves after the album. It's not even one of those scenarios. So it's very interesting to me that like, again, it's a long song, but it's like other long songs in their catalog that they have played.
Yeah.
And that they haven't touched Octavarium. And I get it. Like, just like from an energy standpoint, that's got to be a huge ball buster for Labrie. Like,
yeah.
So I can't imagine that he's like, raising his hand on a regular basis, like lobbying, going, hey, this tour, we should put that in a couple times. I don't think he's ever voting for that, but I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised.
Well, Kale says they've done Razor's Edge since, but not the full Octavarium. It's at the end of Schmedley Wilcox.
Oh, okay.
Wow, good call, Kale.
Wow.
So by the way, Matt, so Kale is from Australia, and he's literally 12 hours behind, so it's 9 o'clock in the morning where he's at. So he literally logs on at 7:30 in the morning to watch and comment on the show. So
I hadn't thought of Schmedley Wilcox in a long time, too, so props to him for that.
I know, right? What's next? Bombay Vindaloo?
That's one of the better. That's a very Dream Theater thing. Like Schmedley Wilcox, that's like I think as fans you appreciate like that they don't just like call it blah 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 medley. Like they gave it like a funny name.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
it's kind of like it's like their anthology greatest hits and 21 other pretty good songs. Like
well, and even that
taking that extra mile.
Well, and you notice the album cover on that. Obviously, they had the the colored out, so it basically said "great as shit." Like,
Yep.
so yeah, they had that too. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there's one more song to go and score, but I think, again, I watched this in a VR headset. I watched it without the VR headset because I was like, am I just really getting into this too much? And then I listened to it, in noise canceling headphones. And this performance of Octavarium is just absolutely phenomenal. I think
it is.
I think this is the definitive performance from Score, and I think it defines Score. Back to your earlier points where they left the ambient noise of the crowd in, the ambient noise of the room. Like, it's an enormous song, and the sound of the whole place makes it sound even more enormous, and the way that they performed it made it sound even more enormous. It's just the biggest sounding recording they've ever done, to me anyway. So
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And dude, I gotta say, like, real quick fanboy moment, we were there. I mean, we'll get to this at the end of the show here in a little bit.
We were at the show?
Yeah. Do you remember that part?
Wow, I do the date look familiar.
Yeah. It's So James Mazza says, I know there's an interview at one point where they asked James about Octavarium, and he said he'd love to perform it in its entirety again. He wouldn't need to do the scream, but I think he could still perform it great. Yeah, the scream thing, like, yeah, that's up there, man. Whew, man. And Kale, good point. The rest of it is fairly in his current range too. I reckon it'd be easy to pull off. Yeah, and here, okay, real quick
before we get on. That's very kind. That's a kind way to say that. Current range.
Just don't.
All right, I won't.
Just don't. So we've got one more song. We've got one more song to get into, but last thought on Octavarium. When you listen back to it, isn't it weird how did you notice how most of the song is pretty mellow?
Yeah.
It's literally, it's like one of their most outrageous, biggest, most recognized songs, especially, from fans. And yet, for the most part, it's 3/4 of it's pretty mellow, which you would not think that would be something the fans would latch onto based on the length of the song.
I think that's what makes the climax of the song that much more like enjoyable.
Yes, excellent point.
It's just like it's an intensity that, like, let's be real. Like, there were people in the audience that Dream Theater fans are dedicated. Yes, we know this. But I'm still going to argue that there were probably some fans in the audience that were Dream Theater fans, maybe hadn't bought the last couple records and were there because they were, fans enough that when they heard that Dream Theater was filming a DVD at Radio City, they were like, it'd be cool to be there for that. So there might have been some people there in the audience that did not have the Octavarium record. And so for those people, or if you're a person that has the record, either way, like, it just, I don't even want to say it builds, because that's the whole thing, is like you said, like, it's mellow for a good portion of the song. And then it just, to pay tribute to our friend Chris Aiken, it smashes you in the face with the ending.
All right.
No, I mean, it's got a really great, it's got a really great way of just like, coming to a wrapping point. Like when you think of songs that are like, just like long suites like that, that's one of the more impressive ones in my book as far as how it wraps up.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I couldn't wait to get the CD and listen to that again. That,
Yeah. It almost seems like, and let's address it now. There's one more song, obviously it's Metropolis. How could you end without Metropolis? You and I were outside. We heard them rehearsing Metropolis, and that's when because you and I had walked to Radio City to make sure we knew where we were going earlier in the day. And that's when we walked around the side of the building and, like, whatever, like, we had heard them doing stuff, and we ran into Mike Portnoy.
Yes, I was like, I can't believe you haven't mentioned this, but yes, we did.
Yep. And Mike Portnoy,
you used the term earlier, fanboyed out, and so let it be said that Jon, and Jon would tell you this himself, he fanboyed out, and to the point that Mike finally said, "Yeah, man. Look, I put my pants on like everybody else, one leg at a time."
He didn't say that much.
He said that though.
He did, but that's before he busted my balls. And I did comment back on him busting my balls because when we walked around the corner to hear what was going on, we saw the live recording trucks.
Yeah.
And Mike Portnoy was out there. And there was only like 8 or 10 people. Like they had saw him. And I was wearing the Train of Thought hockey jersey that I had. And he was about to go back inside. It was a side entrance to Radio City. And I was like, hey, Mike, can I get a quick autograph? He goes, yeah, you're the last one. And I said to him, I said, man, I didn't think I'd see you here. And his response was, well, I got to get back into the building somehow. And I went, no, Mike Portnoy. I literally said, no, Mike Portnoy. I was like, no, like, I mean, like here on the sidewalk. And then that's when the whole, like, yeah, I put my pants on one, like, when
like, so great.
Yeah. But I remember like he busted my balls and I'm thinking, if it's anybody else, I would have been like, no, numbnuts. Like, I mean, at the door, like not outside, you dick. Like, but it was Mike Portnoy.
I'm
so
focusing on you as somebody that, like, by the way, that like I always hated going backstage to like meet bands because like I just would get really nervous about it. And I got to a point where I would start like, planning out what I was going to say. And
right.
I would have something like good to like, talk to them about. And then it's like, I would get back there and I would go, you guys play a great show tonight. And then inside my head, I'm just going, you idiot. Like, ugh.
Were you having a war inside your head?
I was, yes. I wanted to crawl in the solitary shell at that moment. So the answer lies within. You just sounded like a jackass talking to that band. That's what I tell myself.
I'm not going to get into this. I will just keep going. It's just going to keep going. I'm not getting into it.
Our innocence is already faded, John. No turning back now.
See, I'm not even trying to think of it now.
Yeah.
So we get to Metropolis. Was there any surprise that it was Metropolis?
That's just, I mean, it's just a song I enjoy hearing from them. No surprise.
I thought it was great. I mean, there's really, let's be honest, there's not much to say. Like, you have to assume they're going to close with Metropolis. I mean, the one thing I will say though, it was interesting when because they've got like the sleigh bell thing in the actual version.
Yeah.
But Portnoy was doing the hi-hat, like he's doing like the live shit on the hi-hat. I was like, wow, okay, like the one thing that I will say that bums me out about it is that, I mean, you've heard the stories since, obviously the stuff. They were up against the curfew. They were over the New York City union curfews.
Yeah.
And so Labrie couldn't do something cool in that little break before like the ending of the song. And, Portnoy came out and had to be like, there's no place like home. It's the best night of our career. Like, they really couldn't say much. They couldn't like have this big outro that they would have wanted to have.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really the only bummer about the whole thing. And you wouldn't know it just listening to the record or, watching it. But having read that, in Steven Wilson's biography, Lifting Shadows, which again, Brian and I recommend like crazy. Matt, I don't know if you've read it, but if you haven't, you're out of your mind. It's incredible. Like the fact that they had to cut that moment short, it would be like, like you and I are from Cleveland. Let's say we were in a band that was like world renowned, and we get to do our biggest show ever in our hometown. Have to be like, thanks for coming. Okay, get off stage. Like, that would suck.
Yeah,
so that's the
absolutely.
one thing that always breaks my heart for the guys is that like they had the guys like I know them, but oh, my buddy's Dream Theater. But
I had a long conversation with John Myung after the show. Okay, that was my conversation with John Myung after the show.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's the only part that sucks is like they didn't have that moment to actually stand up there and soak it in and just absorb. As we've said, like the energy in that room is something I'd be interested to ask them about. I don't know if they've ever had that energy, ever again in a room like that. And to be able to sit there and bask in what they had accomplished in building this fan base. And having everyone, I mean, Jordan said it best in the documentary and the second disc. He's like, I don't know if there's anybody here from New York. We're playing in New York, and I don't know if there's anybody here from New York. Like, so many people came from around the world to see this. Yeah. They're that popular, and they didn't get to sit there and bask in it. Like, that's the one sad aspect to this show to me.
I
So
like to imagine that, if you ask them about that, they would logically have the answer, "Hey, man, spirit carries on, bro. Another town, another show."
I thought we talked about the punning. Damn you.
I think we did.
We did.
No, I mean, there's no doubt that it had a profound effect on the band that they didn't get a chance to do that. I mean, look at how Petrucci grew like a giant beard and lived in the woods for like a decade. So
Man, you are so disrespectful. That's a glorious beard.
yeah, right, isn't it? Isn't it?
It's so big. It's earning him money now.
It is. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I do wonder. I don't picture them feeling that way about the way it went down. I do think that they probably, I was being somewhat serious. Um, I think that they probably played enough shows at that point, had enough things go wrong that I feel like they were probably hardened to it, and just
Yeah.
it didn't shake them one way or another.
Yeah.
But that being said, like you've now given some ammo, whether it's you or I that gets to talk to a guy from Dream Theater. Like, there's a question we got to ask, and like,
Right.
hey man, I know this is probably the most random question you're going to get on this entire press cycle, but I've been thinking about this for about 15 years, so I'm going to throw this out.
Right. So so James Mazza, our buddy, brings up a great point. It's such a huge accomplishment, though. The live show came out great. Now, if we can just get a Blu-ray version released,
Totally agree, James.
dude. Man, if we could just get Blu-rays of this stuff.
Yeah.
So all right. So I want to tell a few more personal stories
Sure.
real quick, but overall impressions of Score from a musical standpoint, not from having been there.
Yeah.
If you had you not been there, because like you can remove yourself. I don't have that ability.
Sure.
You're much more emotionally intelligent than I am in that respect.
I can absolutely remove myself. See, watch this. Gone.
Look at you blanked out. You should have picked a cool picture like somebody bald. Oh wait, you're already on the screen.
Yeah.
There we go. Hair joke. There's that glare I missed so much.
That's lighting. That's a ring light, John. See, ring light.
Sure, it's not. It's the Hulk Hogan ring around your head. Anyway, so but we've been off topic so much tonight. I love it, man. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime.
No, I mean,
man.
removing myself. Yeah, if I'm not at the show, like, again, like, when you put this in context with the other live records, I mean, it's in my top 3 for sure. And I probably would put it at the top, even if I had not been at the show. I like the set list. There's probably some stuff that I would have liked to have had in the set list, Glass Prison being one.
Okay.
I mean, just looking at the Cleveland show, like there definitely were some things that, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, like we said, take the time. I mean, there's definitely other stuff that I could spike in there, but like Glass Prison is the one that I really wanted to have like represented at the time that Score came out. I was really bummed that knowing that it was being recorded for a live record, I was really bummed that didn't make the set list. So at the time, if I could have added something, it would have been Glass Prison. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty worthy set list. And like you said, the curveballs that are in this show make up for anything that's not here.
Okay. So not as a, removing yourself kind of perspective.
Yeah.
Having been there, how do you feel about the show?
I think you're probably the same way. Like, this was kind of a novel thing at the time to have a recording of a show that I was at, and I can't tell you a single other one off the top of my head now. But there are other shows I've been at since then that have been recorded. So having a copy of a show that that I was at recorded, I mean, huge thing. So, was that the question? Did I even come close?
Yes, you definitely did. I mean, because there's two different reactions, right? It's like you mean, like I can listen to Live at Budokan and be like, oh, this is amazing. But when you listen to Score, it's like, this is amazing, but there's also that I was there. Like it's a different experience because it's almost like it's the difference between, and see if you follow me here. Like I know you're like half blind, but like it's a difference between
You know
watching.
what? If anything, I'm more appropriate to be on this podcast now because I have progressive lenses 15 years later. So progressive. I've got Prague glasses.
I was hoping you were going to go there. It's like the difference between watching a movie in 2D and 3D. Like
it is,
it really kind of is like, watching Live at Budokan is like watching a movie in 2D, but for us, watching Score is like in 3D because we were there. We have that extra level of experience, so many personal memories from that. So I think it's like two different kind of ways to look at things. And
you know what, the other thing that I was thinking of, that I'm glad my brain started firing again after you kind of, took things over. The other reason I do like this live record a lot is that there are shows that I've been at that have been recorded that I have copies of those shows that, and you made this point early on, they don't sound to me like the show that I was at. And that's really what I love about this is that as you kind of said early on, like they really kept the sound of the room and the sound of the night. And that's why, answering this from the perspective of, okay, now consider this as a show since you were there. How do you feel about it? I feel really, good about this because unlike some other shows where it's just like the mix was really too far removed from the actual show that I saw, this is great because this feels like an exact souvenir of the show that I saw, where it's just like, if they were to tell me, oh yeah, we did a bunch of fixes on this show, I'd be very surprised because like, it didn't sound like they futzed with it a ton. Somebody, mentioned, the guitar issue. Okay. They had to fix that obviously. Yep. But it does not feel like a show that they went in and just, re-recorded the entire thing in the story. It's in the studio. It feels very, of the night.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because that's something I forgot to mention earlier. I completely agree with you, especially when you watch. There's a lot of close-ups.
Yeah.
In the video version of this, and you can tell that there's not a lot of edits to this. The band was that on point. They were that spot on. Like, I mean, this is really just a culmination of, I don't think there's any way, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I don't think there's any way this could have turned out any better for them because the energy was there. Like the energy does come across in the live recording. The energy comes across, in the close-ups of them. It comes across with and I'll bring this up. There's an energy to me in when, in the audio recording. I was listening to it in headphones today.
Yeah.
The orchestra's out of tune in a part.
Really?
But yeah, you can. It kind of sounds like wonky for a bit, but that's like a rock and roll thing, and it really kind of adds to it. Like it just adds to that live. Like it doesn't take you out of. A lot of live records, like you said, you don't get the feel in the room. It's not like you were there. Like, but this really, like, that just adds to it. Like, because the ambience of the sound, as we talked about. But then the fact that the orchestra is like that teeny little bit like Black Sabbath-y, like kind of battling the note off, like it just sounds amazing. And I think this is just a culmination, like they said at that point, a culmination of their career to that point, and I just really, what did I do?
I don't know.
Can you still hear me at least?
I can hear you. There's like a pulsating,
all right, cool.
There's a pulsating speaker, so I hear you fine.
All right, well, sweet. Well, yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Apparently this is my camera, so.
Yeah, that's really interesting, like to hear that like out of tune moment with the orchestra, because I did not notice that, but I guess now that we can reveal that that's because they had Zach Wilde playing viola and he was trash. So, I think we just lost John. Now I think John got kicked out. This is awkward for everybody. We'll see if John comes back.
There we go.
There we go.
What the hell was that?
Out.
I have no idea what happened. So yeah,
What I was gonna say, because I was much better prepared for the fact that I might have to like go solo when you dropped away this time.
yeah.
Um, even though to be fair, you were like, hey, tell a story while I go and grab a drink, and I was like, wow, this story is not very long. Now what to do? But what I was going to say, just like as far as like what you were saying about the record itself, I think that the strong point, obviously, that you have here is that, as we know, Dream Theater, they are a great live band, very much in the same way that Rush is a great live band. Like, and I don't know, we could throw. That's the whole thing about prog bands, is they can play the shit out of their instruments. So they have. And you have James, great vocalist. So with all that in mind, like when you have that, like automatically you've got a leg up on a lot of other bands as far as fixes that are necessary in the studio, because it's just like, whatever they're hearing that they're going, we need to fix that, is probably so minor in comparison to your average band, where it's like they're going, well, the bass player totally blew that part, we're gonna have to fix that entire goddamn song.
Right.
And by the way, that's not a crack at you because you play bass. I only realized as I was into it, I'm like, that's actually a good John slam. But I wish I could take the credit for that.
Right.
But that's completely unintentional.
Right.
So that's the good thing here, is that like we have, because we're talking Dream Theater, they would have really had to screw the pooch to have major work to do in the studio after the fact. But they're Dream Theater, so it's like, so they came away with something that like, and that's why as I'm talking through this, I'm sure they had things. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear what they were unhappy with about this show, because I think it would have been pretty comical. Because I've been this way with bands in the studio, where it's just like, look, guys, I don't play an instrument, not for nothing, but like I couldn't hear that. Like, I think you guys are overthinking this. So that would have been my exact, silent reaction, because I wouldn't have wanted the Dream Theater guys to boot me out of the studio. Iron Maiden's another band. Like, I mean, we could go on and on and on, but it's just like, anything that they're bringing up is going to be so trivial, compared to what we heard on the night, which I think is probably, and also, they are the big music fans. Like they bought like Exit Stage Left by Rush. Like they're the type of music fans. Portnoy and Petrucci are the type of music fans that they appreciate those records that they bought when they were growing up, that had those certain imperfections that made them real. So it's like, they're going, whatever we could do to like fix that, minor thing with the orchestra. No, we're not going to fix that.
Well, I mean, to your point, there is a major mistake in the 6 Degrees suite. It's actually my favorite guitar solo. My favorite Dream Theater guitar solo. It's in, the Test That Stumped Them All. After and Petrucci grabs it like he hits that note, but he messes it up, and you can hear it. Just go back and listen. He goes. He hits a wrong fret and goes, and then gets the bend, like, and they left it in on both the live version of the the whole thing's live, but the live DVD and the recording, like, it's in there. They didn't go back and fix it. It goes ding, like you can hear it.
And I'm sure in the in-ear monitors, Portnoy's going, Petrucci, you dumbass, we're not fixing that.
He was too busy. Portnoy was too busy spitting on his cabinets for that. The Camel. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like, it's, there's just that feel to it, and it's, man, I don't even know how to go above that. There's that feel to it, and it is different. Like, you were there, and it feels like you were there. I mean, I think you said it perfectly. Like, you have been at other live recordings. You've been to a ton of stuff. Not trying to over inflate your ego, but you've written for a lot of bands. You've written for Journey, for Christ's sakes.
Don't stop believing. That was mine.
All right, well, let's not go that far.
Yeah,
but
sure.
If you had written that, you wouldn't be on this show. So anyway, so yeah, but I mean, you've written spots for so many bands, and you've been to so many different shows, but you just said, like, this one feels like you were actually, it reminds you that you were there. It was, whereas so many other things like live recordings, like they don't do that.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think they capture. I hate to use this. This is so cliche, you know. James was I stopped believing Matt. Well played, James.
I just showed myself up.
Yeah, there you go. At least you did yours on purpose. I have no idea what happened with mine. Yeah, but I mean, like they really did do a phenomenal job of putting you in the moment, you know, with the DVD and the CD and stuff on this one. And I mean, it's just a fantastic recording, and you know the energy of the show comes across, and I mean, what more can you say? Like the energy of the show comes across. Like I think, you know, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I think you would agree. Listening back to this, we can feel that energy again. You know, it's like it does feel like it was when we were there.
Yeah,
it was
100%.
You know, yeah, I mean, like you said, the ambience of the sound in the room and everything. Like it's just really, you're like, you know, you kind of go, oh shit, man, wow, that was amazing. You know, so.
Nearly 2 hours in, I finally figured out how to see the comments, by the way, and I'm interested here because I see that Kale says that Under a Glass Moon needed to be fixed. So I'm interested.
You can pull him up. You can pull him up if you want to.
No, yeah. Oh, can you pull him up?
Yeah, just click on his comment. It'll say show.
No, I don't get that. It must be you. Must have to be John Drake Power.
All right. Well,
so I'd be interested to know. Like, do you hear that? Did they leave that mistake in, or is Kale saying that they had to fix it?
Well, let's see. I love that though. Kale says, I love that though. I love it when a band owns their own mistakes. Under a Glass Moon needed to be fixed, but everything else is fairly untouched, which is just awesome.
Oh, is that what we were talking about earlier, as far as the guitar part that like was messed up on the night?
It might be.
Okay.
And Kale, please correct us.
That was so long ago that, like, you know, I can't be expected to remember what happened like an hour and 45 minutes ago. So, you know.
You don't remember the Cleveland show.
That's true.
That joke's beaten into the dirt. So
it is.
But
sorry, guys.
Yeah. So, all right. So real quick.
Yeah.
And then we'll get out of here. First of all, thank you very much for coming on, dude. Like, again, you and I have not actually hung out this long, and I don't know how long, but it's amazing that we get to, of the one time we finally get to hang out again. It's about the show we were at. And that show, like, I owe you an apology. As we said earlier, we drove your car. You had been in 2 car accidents in 6 months, I believe it was at that point. And one of them was with a semi. So when we had to drive, we're from Cleveland, Ohio. So all of our trip was through the Pennsylvania Turnpike, basically, into New York.
That was basically my deal with you, is that like you agreed to drive into the city and drive out of the city. So I was like, I'm happy to do all the rest of the driving. I'm like, just, you know, handle that city driving. And I'm like, we'll be good.
I did all of it basically though. I always feel so bad about this because you are the most mellow guy ever. Like it's funny that you're the co-host because you are like, you and Brian would be absolutely like bosom buddies doing this show because you and he are almost like twins.
Nice.
Like your sense of humor, you are so mellow. And man, like we would pass a semi going through the turnpike, the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and you would just white knuckle, you know, the car door and just go. I'd hear this. I'd be like, "Are you okay?" You're like, I'm good. But you had 2 really traumatic experiences, you know, within 6 months. So we're doing that. We get into town, and you know, we were there for like 2 days or something. And then you had to deal with like, I worked in a call center my whole life, so I could understand accents. Everywhere we went in New York City with someone with an accent, you could not understand what the hell they were saying.
It's always been something that people love to make fun of is like, I'm, you know, yeah, that's the short version.
I remember I was trying to help you. But the 2 times I didn't was we're trying to get your car, and you're like, we've got our ticket, and the guy's like, give it a ticket, and you just kind of looked at him blankly, like, I had my,
and you picked up pretty quickly, like as my friends do, like they learn that like that blank stare means you have no idea what the hell he just said.
Yeah. And that was. I was like, dude, he needs your key. He also needs this, that, and the other. And you're like, okay.
The other experience at the pizza place, which would be the other part of this that you were going to tell, like I understood what the guy was saying. I realized now in retrospect, like it wasn't cool. I brought in my own drink. I just was trying to avoid having to pay for a drink that I brought into his establishment a second time, and maybe he realized that I brought it, and he was like, just like, dude, you bring a drink into the place, you're gonna pay for it, so you're gonna pay for it.
Yep.
Oh.
It's such a Coke. Such a Coke.
Yeah,
We're in a pizza place. You're buying a piece of pizza, and then you get and you had walked in with a Coke that you had bought from another pizza place.
It was lasagna pizza, by the way,
Yes.
which was to this day like the most amazing pizza I've had. I had to go to London, like basically nearly 15 years later, before I was able to find lasagna pizza again.
Dude, so I will give you credit on that one, yeah, especially for like New York thin crust. Oh, God, that was good. But I again, I'm a dick friend. I could have bailed you out.
What does that have to do with anything? Sorry.
It has a lot to do with it because I should have bailed you out so the story wouldn't exist.
True.
You're sitting there with this
I want to give you another line. You gave me a line that like I had never heard before that now I think about every single time. I'm going to wait for you to stop drinking. Every single time I'm in the shower, I think of this line now because you told me like
this is getting gross.
Prior to going into the bathroom that like, hey man, I did not ATM the soap. And I was like, ATM the soap. And I'll spare the I'll spare the listeners the explanation of that. Perhaps you can connect your own dots. But ever since then, every time I grab a bar of soap, like I'm just like, oh, it's been 15 years and I still think of that. So thank you for that.
I remember at the time I couldn't believe you hadn't heard that term.
Yeah, so there you go.
You know what? You're not going to be gross. I will be gross. ATMing the soap means like running the soap between your butt crack, like you're swiping an ATM card. So,
and so he tells me this, and I was just like, oh, like, well, thanks for doing that. Thanks for not doing that, asshole.
Matt is not very comfortable like rooming with people, so the fact that he put up with me for a couple road trips is pretty legendary.
Well, again, we already talked about it, but like the hotel room was so small, it literally was Steve Martin and John Candy. Those aren't pillows close.
Those aren't pillows. Hey, by the way, Matt, our buddy Puzziani, he says he's actually at work. He says, I'm making New York pizza now. I'm at work this whole time. All right, well, tell us what pizzeria, where you're at, and what pizza you're making, Joey.
Or does he work from home where he's actually making pizza? That's that's the best of both worlds.
I don't know. This is a Dream Theater podcast, not a Van Halen podcast. It's a whole other idea.
I know. Sorry about that.
But yeah, so
it's about time you pointed that out.
So yeah, man, that was funny. Like, man, and I felt so bad because you were not able to sleep on the way there because you were so nervous because of your car wrecks, and we were coming out of New York City, going through the Lincoln Tunnel, and I was a little bit fried. You were way more fried because you could barely sleep. And all these cars are like inches from the mirrors and stuff. And it's not my car, it's your car. So of course you're fried and, emotionally, and you're fried, physically, and you're fried because it's your car in this crazy traffic. And we're literally like mirror to mirror. And I looked over and I was like, man, are you okay? And you go, I'll never forget. He said, don't look at me, man. Just don't look at me, okay? Like, you don't yell at anyone. And the fact that you yelled at me, and then I just tried to like cover up, and I laughed at you, and man, you just got so pissed. Like, you just went, like, and I felt so bad because I was like, I don't mean to laugh at you. And we get out of the city, it's about an hour. About an hour out of the, hour and a half out of the city. We're finally just rolling, and you were so exhausted, you finally fell asleep. And we get into a construction zone. We had gotten into Pennsylvania, and it was like a 1-lane thing. Oh, dude, I will never forget this as long as I live. I mean, I could do this in real time. This is how quickly this happened. I'm coming around a bend, and I see parts of a deer. Like, a deer gets hit on the highway, you see like a smush and there's like shit on the side of the highway, whatever, or just it's a blood. No, this was like someone had carved up a deer with a car tire and systematically placed each of the big chunks where there's no possible way you can miss, and no matter what you do to swerve. It was like the Kobayashi Maru of, deer in the highway type of thing. And I'll never forget coming around that bend and seeing, I hit the brakes, and I will, this is literally in real time. I go, oh shit, what? Wham! What happened? Like, it was, I felt
it
so
wasn't
bad.
even, by the way, it wasn't even, oh shit. Like, I just heard, like, it was the quavering tone of your voice. You said, oh God. And I just shut up. I'm like, what? And then
What?
you told me,
Wham! What
you didn't
happened?
tell me, that's right. There was like the wham. And then I'm borderline pissed off. I'm like, what did you just do? And you're like, man, and you told me what happened. I'm like, and you're like, I had to pick which portion of the deer I was going to hit. And I'm like just waking up. So I'm like not awake. I'm like, pick what portion of the deer. Don't hit any portion of the deer. And like,
it was so bad. I
took that car through the car wash. That blood was still on the car for a good couple of years before it finally washed off.
Dude, I give you credit because the very next rest stop, I was like, and you're like, what the hell? I'm like, dude, I swear to God. Like, if I had a picture of it, dude, you would have looked at it and been like, yeah, I get it. Like, there's no way to avoid that.
In retrospect, we really should have gone back and taken a picture of it to commemorate the whole trip.
I think you were a little bit too worried about the fact that, you had been in like 2 car accidents in 6 months. Now your car got smashed by a deer, a dead deer, albeit.
The sound it made, like, it was like just that thought, like, oh shit, this car's gonna be messed up. We're not gonna make it home.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we pulled off, and it's like everything is miraculously fine. we drove the rest of the way home.
I felt so bad because there was that spray, and thank God you laughed.
I like that James Mazza, by the way, is saying he's reacting to this whole deer story by saying, one of my favorite feelings is driving home late at night from a great concert. You feel all jazzed up from the evening and the ears are still ringing. And so, of course, all I have to add to that is, and you hit a deer, so.
Well, and he says, and deers could do some real damage to a
People
car.
have died because of deers.
and we got to shout out Puziani again. He says, we asked him where
pizza, God.
he says Pizzavola, Indian Harbor Beach, Pizzavola, Indian Harbor Beach. Are you, man, we have not had a Florida viewer yet, man. Joey, that's awesome. So Puziani is making pizza while listening to our show at Pizzavola in Indian Harbor Beach, Florida. He said he just made a pepperoni bacon, and he's made a pizza for a Dream Theater member. So now, okay, Puziani, you gotta put that in the chat. Which Dream Theater member did you make a pizza for, and what were the toppings?
It was John Myung, and his feedback to the pizza. John just couldn't shut up. I'm sorry. The John jokes are getting played out, so I'm sorry, guys.
It's all good. So yeah, so dude, okay, so we'll close up shop here. Like, we gotta wait for Puziani to like let us know what Dream Theater member. But I mean, I think okay. James Mazza. It was Charlie Dominici, A Fortune in Pies. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's phenomenal. Oh. So
I haven't seen the picture, but now I want to look it up on the internet.
Yeah. Now you made a fortune in pies. So, all right. So let's close it up here. We got to wait for Puziani to tell us which band member. But overall thoughts on Score, dude. Again, to me, it's their best live release, and even removing myself from having been there and having had those experiences that we did.
Yeah.
We're amazing friends. We have not hung out personally in God knows how long, but we keep in touch by text. Like now,
yeah, I mean, we haven't hung out. Let's be real. Like, we haven't hung out, because of the pandemic, which for most people has been a couple of years, but for us, it's been like 10 years.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, like we've not hung out and obviously, like, we are good friends. Like, we're one of those, a couple of people that can just hit each other up whenever we want to hit each other up.
Yeah.
So there's always that connection. And especially back then, like, we went to a lot of shows together before you were married, before I was married. Like, we road trip to a lot of places. And, that notwithstanding, I still think this is Dream Theater's most solid live release.
I agree.
And I think you absolutely nailed it, saying, the way they recorded it, the ambient, they had that room ambience in it. There's just that sound. Like, you said that it sounds a little thin, and I would agree with that, but I think I would sacrifice that for the fact that it sounds like you're in the room. It's that
I
3D
don't
room
think it's a
sound.
negative. Yeah.
So to me, this is their best live album. It was an amazing experience hanging out with you. So I just really think this is a fantastic representation. I think Portnoy nailed it. He's like, this is, one of the greatest night of our careers. And, in the documentary, like, this is a perfect way to encapsulate the first part of their career. And I completely agree. So where do you stand? What's your final thoughts?
No, I totally agree. I think you hit it on the head. Like, and I mean, I kind of forgotten about Portnoy's comments, but, that's a perfect summary of it, really. Like, the way he summarizes it, I mean, it really is like, if you're looking to, like, kind of, put a cap on the first 20 years of their career as they did, it really does that quite nicely.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much for hanging out, man. Let's get out of here on Puziani's note. He was originally from Long Island, I think. For 2 years he cooked for his mom and John Petrucci. Wait a minute. Are you saying that you cooked for John Petrucci's mom, Puziani?
That's what he's saying. It's not that hard to follow, John.
Yeah. Well.
He laid it out in several
goes.
different comments, to kind of like ease you in gently. So,
What do you know, dude? You're not Italian. Like, yeah. James Massa, thanks for the show tonight. Dude, thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise,
he says, so Puziani says, crazy to be working in the same town John Petrucci grew up in. This was 8 years ago, and I remind him at every meet and greet. So, all right, so he cooked pizza for John Petrucci, and he cooked for his mom. So, man, Puziani, good for you, man.
I like the fact that Joey like reminds him of that at every meet and greet. That makes me think of. It just makes me wonder. Have you seen? Does this guy listen to Talking into Infinity? The guy that keeps buying the cameos from Mike Portnoy, because I respect that guy, because that guy always buys like a cameo from Portnoy and then asks him like good like fan questions. So I like that he's like putting down the dough to like get these like these questions answered. So. I don't know if that guy listens to Talking into Infinity, but just in case he's out there somewhere, I want to just say that Joey's comment made me think of that. I legitimately appreciate that guy for spending his hard-earned cash on Cameo just to find out Dream Theater nerd stuff for the rest of us.
Well, the funny thing is, like you mentioned segues. Well, you just made an amazing segue considering you said like that guy's putting down the dough. Well, Puziani's putting down the dough for Petrucci and his mom.
Yeah.
Literal dough. So
dough.
As I said earlier, man, I know segues. So Puziani, that's awesome. And
he says, sadly, he moved to Florida. The only celebrity he gets is Howie D from the Backstreet Boys. And for fans of Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, Howie D is so low on the Backstreet Boys totem pole. So sorry for that, Joey.
We end the show on a Backstreet Boys blast. All right.
There you go. I serve all kinds, buddy.
Man, I got to tell you, like, this is the longest show we've done. And first of all, I can't thank you enough for coming on because, Brian can't be on. Me. Yeah, dude. But like on a personal note, it was amazing to hang out with you. I've been looking forward to this for 3 weeks since, you said that, you were going to jump on. So hopefully all you guys listening and watching, hopefully you guys have had a great time. This has been a fun. Are you laughing at the pineapple thing? Like,
I am. Seriously. James 5-star on that one.
James Massa, give me a cheese pizza with pineapple. I want it that way.
Yeah, tell me why you want that pizza. Yeah, there we go.
Tell me why. I can't.
That's a great place to end us singing. One of us sings somewhat professionally. The other one does not. See if you can figure out which one.
It's probably you.
Well, Joey's going to dinner on Joey next time we're in Florida. We will go to Florida tomorrow.
All right, Puziani. I'm holding you up to that, man. If you're going to make me actual Italian, then, we'll do it. I know how to talk like this.
Does not, that offer does not stand for Brian because Brian was not here tonight.
That is actually 100% true. So, Dude, again, thank you so much for hanging out, Matt. It was great to hang out with you again. It was great to talk about score. It was great to relive our trip. That was a crazy fun road trip.
Dude, so good.
Yeah. So, guys, thank all of you so much for hanging out again. All of our good friends. Puziani, thanks for playing along. Kale McLeish, Adam Rishog, all you guys. Man, thank you so much for hanging out and checking out Talking Into Infinity. Don't forget, we are live right here at this exact location, wherever you are watching or listening, every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're listening to the audio replays, thank you for doing that. If you want to catch the show live and be a part of the chat, just go to Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, or the cmsnetwork.com. And please, overall, don't forget to go check out Heavy Metal Television. That is where our video replays are at every other Friday. So, Matt, I think we can close up shop the best way possible. We have a close friend, our buddy Aiken. We may have busted his balls tonight, but he's been in the hospital with pneumonia. And, hey, let's wish him the best of luck, man.
Yep,
best of health.
We want to be in person with him, busting balls as soon as possible.
Yep, definitely. Much love to all of you guys. Appreciate you so much. Brian says, hey, and guys, we will catch you next time. 2 weeks from tonight, it'll be James LeBree's best vocal moments. Top 10 vocal moments from Brian and I right here on Talking Into Infinity.